All right, for the second time, I can say it. Happy Friday evening to everybody listening and watching this as the Sportswire Radio Friday night show is going to talk all the latest happenings here in the world of sports, whether it's WrestleMania 39, one of my favorite topics, one of our, obviously, analysts' favorite topics here, Mr. Randy Dillon. Also, some NHL hockey seasons going into the down the stretch. Also, some NBA, Major League Baseball. Who knows what else? Maybe even some March Madness. And we are joined by the aforementioned host of the Hockey Fan Chat. He is also our resident wrestling and NHL expert. His name is Mr. Randy Dillon. Randy, how are you, my friend?
I'm great, Tom. How are you? Great to be back this week.
And great to have you. Obviously, we had some other news off the show, but it all worked out, thank God. And that is certainly always a good thing. We like to hear that here on Sportswire Radio. And obviously, Randy Dillon, a lot to get into. You have missed us here for the past couple weeks, but we have a lot to talk about because we are now coming down to crunch time, just 8 days away from WrestleMania 39. And I just saw here, which really intrigued after just watching this triple threat match here for the Intercontinental Championship between Gunther, who I think, and probably you as well, stole the show at the Royal Rumble, is going to be squaring off against Sheamus and Drew McIntyre. I mean, this match, I got a feeling, might be one of the more intriguing matches we're going to see. And for those that are listening and watching, I mean, give us your thoughts on what we can expect coming up in this match and more.
My thoughts on this triple threat match. This match could steal the show. Let's go back to Clash the Castle. Sheamus and Gunther stole the show in the second match. Gunther put on a heck of a Royal Rumble performance. And let's not forget, Drew McIntyre and Sheamus were there close to beginning to the end. So this match, I think, could steal the show for WrestleMania. We are in for a treat.
And I gotta feel like also for Gunther, certainly after coming off Royal Rumble, he's had a lot of momentum here as the Intercontinental Champion. I mean, this could maybe even further solidify him, maybe as being on the cusp of what you'd want to call a main event caliber guy.
Oh, 100%. When you go back to, I even think last year, there were still questions about Gunther when he entered in the main roster. What was he like? He put all silencers down at Clash the Castle with that performance of Sheamus. Since then, he has been a top tier talent. They're almost every week putting on incredible matches with the likes of Kofi Kingston, Ricochet,
a number of matches
Strowman.
with Ricochet. Yep.
He had put on some high quality matches, performances individually. He's been able to cut great promos. He's really taken the Intercontinental Championship from what was a forgotten belt to once again one of the most prestige belts in the business. So he has done a lot of great things. So I definitely think it's only a matter of time for him till he hits main event status to being one of the top guys.
And I almost feel like here, especially getting a win off a guy like a Drew McIntyre, who has certainly been at the biggest stage and has a win at WrestleMania against a guy named Brock Lesnar. I mean, that would really, I kind of feel like further solidify, because no disrespect to some of those opponents. I know Kofi has been at the top of the mountain, though not recently. And you also mentioned, again, Ricochet. And Ricochet has had a couple different titles, great run in NXT, even a Braun Strowman. But Drew McIntyre, I kind of think a win over here, in a way kind of similar to what Austin Theory has done with the U.S. title, could really kind of cement him even further.
Oh, 100%. But I have this sneaking feeling, though, Gunther's not going to be Intercontinental Champion after WrestleMania for some reason.
Wow. Why do you say that for, Randy Dillon?
I think the Drew McIntyre is there to take the 1, 2, 3 so Sheamus can become the first ever person WWE to win every big accomplishment.
Interesting. That's because Sheamus has held all those different titles. So, I mean, it used to be back in the day before I get to Justin Gianelli, and we'll definitely talk to New Jersey Devils in a little while. It used to be you'd be the Grand Slam champion, but what does this make you now, having all those different titles?
It's something I don't think we've seen. Gunther, Sheamus has won World Championship, the IC, United States Tag Team. He's won Royal Rumble, Money in the Bank, King of the Ring. Like, he's won almost things some people have never been close. Like, you look at some of the best, the Austin, the Rock,
Bret Hart,
Undertaker,
Shawn
Cena.
Michaels,
Like
yep,
they have their accomplishments, but they've never won almost
Orton.
everything in WWE.
So let me ask you another question here. And obviously, Sheamus has been in the WWE on the main roster for almost 15 years. I think we're looking at like 14 years on the main roster, and somebody can fact check me on this. But in his place in WWE history, I mean, let's say he hypothetically wins the IC title next weekend. Where do you think this puts him in terms of his legacy in WWE?
It's a cemented legacy. Like he's not going to be in the Mount Rushmore or one of the guys named that you think of W. Shaman, but he's done a lot internationally. Think about him. He was the only European guy for the longest time with Regal, Dave Finlay, and he come over and he cemented himself as being kind of the first European guy to win a world title in in pro wrestling. I think in one of the bigger companies. So
Yeah, that's a good
definitely.
point. I'm trying to think about that now. It's a great question because we always think about, you mentioned Regal, you mentioned Finley. You certainly throw out the British Bulldog, God rest his soul, but I mean, comes to a guy like him from Ireland, European, yeah,
Not
not too many have had that type of success, if at all.
exactly, and then I think what he's done, so it definitely going to cement him as probably one of the best international superstars WWE has ever. Well, maybe one of the best international superstars WWE has ever had at this point. I think.
I mean, I hate to throw this out there because people are going to lynch me, and certainly Mr. BMD might be one of those people. But I mean, the British Bulldog had a great career, no question about it. But I
Maybe
mean,
successful. Let's put in perspective. Maybe the one of the most successful international.
this was my follow up. I was actually going to say, Randy Dillon, you could certainly make the case that Sheamus has had a more successful and a more fruitful run than the British Bulldog. Certainly, the Bulldog means a lot. Leave aside championships, but Sheamus just very well might be the most successful.
100%. And then we got the news today. It's finally going to happen. The second ever father versus son match at WrestleMania. Dominic versus Ray. We go back to
Now, what
WrestleMania
do you
7.
think about that? Because I really thought it was really well done how they actually finally gave you the announcement tonight. Because you were kind of thinking, all right, Ray's going to back away from it. Dominic's just going to keep going. We see that Dominic kind of comes in and distracts Ray, and LA Knight gets a win over him. And then we kind of see the sister and the wife sitting there, obviously the mother of Dominic Mysterio. And then it kind of all finally comes to a T there. I mean, I thought it was well done. What about you?
It's a combination of Dominic debuting at SummerSlam 2020, kind of getting involved with Seth Rollins, him teaming with Ray, and now for him coming on his own with Judgment Day. This is the culmination, I think, of really one passing the torch in the Mysterio legacy, father to son. And then for Dominic, all eyes are on you. You've delivered some great promos, you've delivered some great match, but here it is. Can you perform when it matters the most?
That's a good question. I mean, that's a good question, but I would make the case, which I can't believe I'm saying this. If you would have asked me this 3 months ago already, Dylan, I would have said, what am I on? I actually do think, though, that the run that Dominic Mysterio has had, he can do it. I mean,
it's possible, definitely. I think he's put on some great matches. But we really haven't seen him much in long single matches. Like he's
but we
had some.
talked about, but remember though, we talked about this though with MJF, and we thought, you know what, MJF can't do it, and he proved us wrong.
No, definitely. But I also think, as well as one thing, that I think the other thing that may be more pressure than anything, you're in the ring with your father, a guy whose legacy is cemented. So it's one thing to be in a top qualifying match, but for anyone to do something that level with your dad, it definitely, you feel as all the sons out there in the world, they can definitely feel the pressure when you're with your dad doing something that big.
No question about that. And I'm going to get to a father and daughter in a second, but BMD. Well, I think BMD, I'm available based on scheduling. I think next Sunday I'm actually available for you to return to Sportswire. So if that works for you, he says, I agree. The British Bulldog was huge, but European wrestlers have really been put on the map recently, and it's made wrestling in the UK and across mainland Europe much bigger now. People like Sheamus, Drew McIntyre, Gunther have definitely impacted that for us. I kind of feel the same way because no question, and I loved the British Bulldog. Let me just put it that way. I loved watching the British Bulldog. Unfortunately, I didn't get to see him in the early to mid 90s, but I got to see him at the tail end of his run and started like around 1997. But I mean, you think about the last decade. Look at Sheamus. Drew McIntyre certainly has been a main event tier wrestler, and what Gunther has done here with the Intercontinental title. I mean, I do think in a way this has really benefited those of us outside the United States. And as you know, Randy, on Sportswire, we are kind of the haven for wrestlers outside the United States.
100%. Look at the likes of Finn Balor, the women's division, Becky Lynch, Rhea Ripley, Toni Storm, to name a few out there.
Saraya, you got to throw Saraya in there.
Pete Dunne, Tyler Bate, Dragunov. Like, there's a list of European wrestlers that have come over that Sheamus that started with the British Bulldog and then carried by William Regal.
But there was a period of time where after the Bulldog unfortunately left us that we had a void, and now you think about it, you rattled off a whole list of stars: Finn Balor, Becky Lynch, Sheamus, McIntyre, Gunther, Pete Dunne. I mean, you just listed a whole bunch of people. Rhea Ripley could throw another Australian, but you could throw just all the list of talent. Toni Storm, Saraya. Got to mention Saraya for our UK fans because of the Knight family. The Knight family is almost like the Flairs and the Ortons. Fit Finlay, but later on. But I do have some points here because people like when I talk wrestling. We have a ton of people tuned in here. Uncle Ralph of the Modern Day Mafia, and big shout out, Randy, to Uncle Ralph because Uncle Ralph was at the Arcadian show tonight. How was the Arcadian show, Uncle Ralph? Also, this individual here, who, by the way, I have a shirt of his. Certainly, it might be named the Lawman, Kyle Kennedy. In fact, I have to pull it up here for him. You're going to chuckle, Randy, because actually I got to give him a big plug because he's actually up at like 2 o'clock in the morning. Have our brand new shirt that I'm going to wear coming up here this Wednesday live. Man, Kyle Kennedy on Pro Wrestling Tees. Got to give him a big shout out. He's tuned in. Says, evening, gents. Also, Skulls, the Soul Collector, says, did I get my message? I don't know did you message me? I don't know if I got it, but I will check in a little while. Also, we have here, he mentions Fit Family, yes, and Uncle Ralph says very enjoyable. All right, so great stuff there. We'll talk a lot about that for sure. But speaking of fathers and then those that are in the ring, Randy, I thought it was interesting tonight that Charlotte Flair didn't get the kind of reaction as certainly you would think somebody as a good person or a face, whatever you want to call a good woman. I don't know if you call it good woman, a good guy, good woman, but it just seems to me Charlotte is so awkward in that spot as a babyface, especially after watching that promo tonight. What's your thoughts on that as we get to Charlotte Flair versus Rhea Ripley?
Charlotte never worked out of the face. I think you look at her day when she first came to main roster, she came out of the face as Nikki Bella, then they sneakily switched her to a heel. They tried switching her back to a face in 2017-18. It really didn't work out, and then they switched her back to heel in 2019. Charlotte's never been, I think, a face where people just see around.
She's not naturally. People look at her and say, what's her last name? Flair. They look at her as basically like she's entitled, even though she's not, but they look at her as entitled. She's got a certain look. She's got a certain standard, and I think that's why people really don't want to cheer her.
Exactly, and I think you look at some of her best work. You look at her work with Becky and Sasha Banks at WrestleMania 32. You look at her work with Trish. Heck, you look at her work the first time with Rhea Ripley when she was coming off as a heel. It just fits so naturally. Right now, people, I think, are more inclined to go with Ripley because it's just like Charlotte doesn't fit this bill.
No, and she's never, I don't know, I always don't know why WWE always tries to force feed us that Charlotte Flair should be this person we should get behind, this person that we should cheer. I just don't get it, Randy. Is somebody there trying to play a cruel joke on the fans?
Yeah, I know. I understand the reason why they put the title back on Charlotte because they felt things were not going right with Ronda Rousey, and it was the right move to give Charlotte the belt for her to have this match with Rhea Ripley.
Yeah,
could have been a better story where you had two heels maybe going at it rather than kind of two baby faces, a baby face and the heel, the origin, how it usually is. Maybe, I don't know, but we've talked about this, Tom, right? The promos between Charlotte and Rhea, they really haven't mesh. It's kind of an up, and the reports are they're supposed to close night one, where I think the argument could be you let the Usos and Sammy. And
I don't know if I know why they'll do it because you want to have at least one women's title match close. I get it, but I don't think Charlotte and Rhea. I
But
don't
I'm
know.
going to say this: they might be able to awe us in their performance. I will put it at that, though.
I don't doubt that part, but I don't think that the fans really like Charlotte Flair as a babyface, good woman. I don't know what you want to call it, but she even made the statement she's been 14 times. And you can see the fans were like kind of groaning about it. Then she mentions the legacy. She mentions her father. It was like, just to me, I just don't get it. I got a ton of comments here. The lawman Kyle Kennedy says, that's a beautiful shirt. You damn straight it is. You can go to Pro Wrestling Tees and go get yours. A Lawman Kyle Kennedy shirt. I'll be wearing it on Wednesday's show with him, 7:15 p.m. British Standard Time. Skulls said something big as his message. Yeah, I saw the message, and thank you, Skulls, for that. Craven Rage says the Intercontinental title match is going to be great. I'm going for a spoiler that Sheamus is going to accomplish his legacy winning. I mean, you sold me on that. James Barris, yeah, you might want to turn that down because we don't want to hear me multiple times over. James Barris, the owner of Cutlery Championship Wrestling, who was my guest about a week and a half ago, says, Tom, never forget the poll, never lies. Yeah, we're talking about a poll here when it came to one Slugger Hampton. Obviously, Mr. Barris has a big show coming up, Miners Mania 2. Next Friday, go to Cutlery Championship Wrestling on Facebook for more information. Also, Craven Rage, I agree, Charlotte as a face has been, it's not a good fit. It never will be a good fit. Skull said it's like making Nikki Cross from crazy chick to a super. I don't think it's that drastic, but I just don't think it works.
They could have actually made that work with Nikki Cross as a superhero. It just
I think it kind of did work, and then it didn't work. If that makes sense, it kind of worked, and then it didn't work. Also, Uncle Ralph says, personally, I have a soft spot for Bailey. Well, I have a soft spot for Bailey for other reasons, but that's the behind Bailey. But I don't want to do that because we're a family show on Sportswire, and I don't want to be like other people that certainly come on these things. But I'll go over to that here in terms of what do you expect here in this 6-woman match here between Trish, Lita, and Becky Lynch, who are obviously 2/3 of the tag team champions, and Damage Control. I mean, what do you expect here with Bailey and Io Shirai and that match here? What's your expectations with that?
I think with this match, it does have potential to be a very good match, but I think for story-wise, I think Damage Control needs the win because from what I've been hearing, the plan is to make Trish go heel to have a story with Becky. I think it's a good move. Personally, I thought we were going to get Bailey versus Trish at WrestleMania. I thought that would have been a.
Why did we go with that? Why did we have to put the tag titles on Lita and Becky? They don't need the tag titles, some would say.
You could have a rematch with Damage Control or make it a fatal 4. I thought definitely we were going to get Trish versus Bailey, but I don't know why they didn't decide to go that direction. The 6th match, it's a nice movement, I guess, but if they win clean, and if Trish turns heel on Monday, what do you do with Damage Control? Damage Control had no momentum, no nothing going forward.
They really haven't had that much momentum the last couple months.
Exactly, but if they can win, you can the hope is the draft comes up, you flip them to SmackDown and maybe do something there.
It's interesting. I certainly think that's not a horrible idea. Also, Skull says, hi, Craven, because if you have been following Randy, him and Craven Rage have been having a big feud, and it's been the talk of Sportswire and other platforms. He also says hello to James Barris, obviously the owner of Cutlery Championship Wrestling here. All right, so I got to come to the bloodline here. Obviously, it's been announced we are going to see those tag team titles up for grabs with the Usos. Whether Jimmy and Jay are on the same page, I don't know. We've got Solo Sikoa also in the mix here. Also, we're going to see him. Was just announced going to be in the ring with Cody Rhodes coming up here next Monday, right before WrestleMania. I mean, so when it comes to the bloodline, I mean, are we looking at the end of days of their run as champions or what?
Oh, I've been thinking about this all week. What is the future of the bloodline? Is the explosion going to happen? No group lasts forever in pro wrestling unless you're the NWO just trying to sell for whatever reason.
Yeah, but that was they were just trying to reboot and reboot and reboot. I pray the bloodline doesn't go through that, Randy.
Yeah, sometimes you just got to let things go. But I could see Sammy and Kevin winning and Roman somehow still walking out with the championship. I could see Roman losing and both and the Usos retaining. I could see both teams winning and or both teams losing. It's so hard to see. I think I said that a few weeks ago. I think Sami Zayn and Kevin Owens need to win the tag team titles because at that point, there's really the Usos have beaten every team in WWE. There's no other team left to them beat them unless we're getting to fantasy matchmaking and stuff. And that's like
I never liked the fantasy when you put like superstar teams together, whether it was Austin and The Rock, or even to an extent Rock and Mankind, Undertaker and Kane. I mean, even though Jericho worked, I mean, you can go down the list. I mean, Edge and Orton. I mean, I never liked those superstars that come together as tag teams, or even Lita and Becky to an extent. Throw them out. I never liked going down that road personally.
Exactly. So that's why I think they need to win. Now, again, with Roman and Cody, I still don't know who's going to win this match. That promo.
See, I feel that Cody needs to win more than Sammy and KO because I feel like that Cody has put in every promo, he's put the legacy out there. He's put to the fact that he has to do it. He has to finally win here for the Rhodes legacy. I mean, to me, if the Usos retain the tag team titles, well, Sammy and KO never win in these spots anyway. But Cody, for me, I think he has to win.
Yeah, no, there's definitely the argument there because if Cody doesn't win, what next for Cody? What do you do next for him?
I don't think there's really anywhere you can go with him ultimately because the problem here is that he's put everything that he has here these last couple of months since he's come back at taking that championship for his family because his father didn't do it and he didn't have in the first run the kind of success, and even in AEW, he didn't win their world championship.
No, you're absolutely right there. So but again, the 1,000. Are we going to see 1,000? That's where it does. Are we going to see day 1,000? Because it's close, but not close enough. So I think if I'm a betting man and I'm looking at Triple H. Triple H, he's always thinking ahead. He knows for longevity in storytelling to keep the product going. The best decision is for Cody to win because we know Roman's going to take time off after Mania. Now, my one fantasy is unless somehow we know The Rock's going to get involved in WrestleMania, unless he's the reason that cost Cody the title. That
would be your fantasy booking, and then that would be where you get a chance to kind of maybe see that develop finally to take place next year. I mean, to me, I think it's must win for Cody. I don't think it's must win for KO and Sammy, but part of me even thinks that the bloodline may come out of WrestleMania with no championships, and we may see for the first time kind of that where you're going to see that adversity a little because they haven't had that adversity in 2.5 years.
You're absolutely right. It tells a different story. I don't expect Jimmy and Jay to break up as much as people are saying they're going to go the separate ways. I think these guys are going to stay together, but I think they're going to distance themselves for Reigns. The big thing is, could we see something between them and Solo going down the road?
Listen, what did we see on the end of Raw where Roman said, "You're not ready"? He said, "You're not ready." I mean, so there has to be at some point something that leads to where they're going to kind of have to have some type of roadblock. They haven't had it.
I think The Rock is somehow going to be involved in this implosion because he could be the reason Roman wins, like that's a fancy, but I think more sense for him because he's going to be at WrestleMania. I don't expect him. We already talked. He's not going to be matched, but could he come out where the bloodline comes out and stares them down and be the reason why they can't help Roman? And for that,
that's a fair point. And I got a bunch of comments here. Let me get to them first. Mr. Craven Rage says, I see the Usos losing, then I can see Roman Reigns losing, so WWE can split the championship titles. Skulls has made it heard that he does not like the bloodline. I like the bloodline, though. I don't know if they're going to keep the titles, though. WrestleMania is getting an RKO. Well, what do you know that I don't know, Mr. Skulls? He says, I see Roman Reigns dropping the title because it is talked about that he is taking a break from WWE. Well, maybe. Rumors are Bobby Lashley versus Chris Masters is supposed to happen at WrestleMania. Listen, can I just say this out there? You really think that Chris Masters is going to have a match against Bobby Lashley at WrestleMania? We haven't seen Chris Masters in a WWE ring in God knows how long. You really think that's going to happen?
Yeah, I don't think that's gonna happen. From what I've heard, if Bray Wyatt can't go, LA Knight will take his spot. I think that's a good guy to take his spot.
Well, he got to win over Ray tonight, so I mean, you at least got him on a
I just
little
hope it's
bit
not
of.
a squash match if they decide to do that. Bobby just runs him over. I think LA Knight has done a lot of great work. The pitch black match definitely, I think, to hurt both people, not just him and Bray Wyatt. It hurt both characters in a bad way. I think if him and Lashley can put on a little bit of a good match, I think it definitely can tell a story.
All right, maybe no. We'll have to find out. If you are on Sportswire Radio, I want to thank everybody. Randy, a lot of people tuned in tonight. I want to thank them for tuning in here. If you are on Facebook, you can check us out anytime at Sportswire Radio. Close to 600 followers. A lot of people one by one supporting us. I want to thank everybody for that. You can always listen to us in shows that Randy puts on for us, like the Hockey Fan Chat at sportnarium.com/player. Also, YouTube at Sportswire Radio. And my name is the Reverend Tom Bryce, and we're here for a few more minutes talking wrestling. I'll move over to the NHL before the rest of the Sportswire Radio gang comes on here. And also, Skull said that was posted on Wrestling Wire. Now, I imagine Wrestling Wire is a dirt sheet. Is that how I would read that, or a website with wrestling?
Don't trust the dirt sheet. They didn't get the Bray Wyatt story right, so their credibility.
Well, I did like the pitch black drink though from Mountain Dew. Remember, famously, I tried that on the air, and I have to say that was pretty good. Also, Craven Rage loves your New Jersey Devils jersey. I'll definitely get into them here. Also, our very good friend, Mr. Adam Morgan, who's always doing something here. The greatest wrestler in the world will show up and beat Lashley. The Great Khali. He even has great in his name. That's how good he is. The Great Khali. I mean, boy, that's one for the ages here. The Great Khali showing up against Bobby Lashley. I mean, who's next out there? I mean, anybody else could throw some name. Maybe Kozlov. We saw Kozlov on Impact last week. Maybe Kozlov will wrestle Bobby Lashley instead. Braun Breaker is being called up after Mania. Well, I mean, we'll certainly find out, but I do want to bring it up here. I mean, I guess, is Randy Orton coming back? Because I did see a comment from Skulls. WrestleMania is getting an RKO, and it's been a long time since Randy Orton's been in a WWE ring, and that kind of makes me wonder, what's going on with Randy Orton?
There are reports he is getting close to return. I don't expect him to be at Mania. I expect him to more be at the Raw after Mania. Because I think for him, there's really no place for him to be involved in any Mania match. Now you can make the argument maybe he helps Cody and then that sets up the feud between him and Cody down the road. But I don't expect him to be at Mania. The next night on Monday Night Raw, I see an RKO out of nowhere.
Okay, well, it looks like I was frozen in time, maybe. That's the second time here tonight. That's okay. I do have a question for you, though. What's your thoughts on Brock Lesnar and Omos?
Oh, my goodness. This match, I've been trying to figure out what's going to on because for those who actually do wrestle and those who think professional wrestling is somewhat of a dance. You're only as good as your partner. Omos, we haven't seen him put on any great matches, even single matches. His match with Braun Strowman, decent. His match with Bobby Lashley, decent. Brock Lesnar, we've heard, if he does not like working for you, it's gonna get ugly. Look at the Dean Ambrose match, for example, at WrestleMania, where Dean Ambrose and Brock Lesnar, they did not clash, and Dean Ambrose put some spit, but I think some blame can be put on him as things have come out recently about him. So I definitely think this match, it needs to be quick, simple, and easy. You can't over-allow it. It can't be a squash. I have to give this match 5 minutes, but if it's more than 5 minutes, it's going to get ugly. It's going to.
I gotta be honest, Randy. This has to be Brock Lesnar's most lackluster opponent in a storyline he's ever been in the ring with since, I don't know, since the first couple of months he was called up 21 years ago. I mean, I'm gonna be honest. I got no interest in this.
No, no one does. And I remember his earlier match, like I think it was the 2002 Vengeance against RVD in his one of his big early match, and that was a very good match him and RVD put on. I think I think this could be just as bad or even worse than his and Goldberg performance at WrestleMania 24, where these two guys didn't care. And I think but I think for I think Brock may realize he's working with a guy like you are gonna have to carry him. And I think Brock's been a guy, if you're good working with him, you can put on a great match. But if you're not willing to put your effort with Brock ain't carrying you. He's gonna throw you and hurt you.
Oh, listen, Brock can do a lot more than hurting and throwing, and a guy like Omos certainly could very well feel that wrath next week. Skull said Kozlov is TNA as of yesterday. Yes, I had brought that up. Craven Rage says it's talked about Randy Orton is coming back for Cody Rhodes. He did have the group legacy. Now, that would make sense, I guess, if Randy were to return, cost Cody Rhodes the championship against Roman Reigns. That I might actually believe. That's not a terrible thought there. You really want to see Omos for Shaquille O'Neal at this point? We saw Shaquille O'Neal a couple of years ago in AEW, and it was okay for what it was when he teamed up with Jade Cargill against, Red Velvet and Cody Rhodes. I mean, listen, I don't think I'd want to see Omos for Shaquille O'Neal. I barely want to see Omos versus Brock Lesnar. Adam Morgan, funny man here. Omos has been practicing the shooting star press. He will hit it as on Lesnar as a throwback from Brock botching it against Kurt Angle. Yeah, that certainly
if
is.
Omos can hit that, I think that's the highlight of the night. Forget that. Like
we might have to find out here. It's going to be a flop. Yeah, Brock and Omos. There's no thoughts here. And Craven Rage wants to ask you, what do you think happens between Asuka and Bianca Belair?
See the tension now finally getting up in this match. Again, it really has been a weird build up where Balor has been powerful, Asuka playing a sneaky mind game, then she finally went on Balor, and I think we'll see what happens this Monday. But this match, there's a lot of potential here. I'm still betting Asuka wins the title because you look at. I really compare this run for Bianca Belair to what Becky Lynch run when she won the title from Ronda Rousey in 2019.
Yeah,
it was very hype, but not enough opponents, not enough storytelling. The stories were a little weird. They felt like they should come at one and done. For example, 3 matches with Becky Lynch. The feud with Bayley was okay, but the Alexa Bliss was there, but I think they definitely could have done more work.
Bliss was like one and done. It was,
but we found out there was a reason why it was one and done. So maybe they can go back if they decide. But yeah, this match with how underwhelming the promo has been delivered, it has to deliver at a high standard for it to be okay. But
I'm going to say gun to my head, and I'm not saying figuratively I'll actually have a gun to my head, but I'm going to say gun to my head, Asuka does pull it out, and I can't believe I'm going to say this. I think Charlotte hangs on against Rhea Ripley. I could get this totally wrong, but that's kind of where I'm going, I think, with this.
I think Rhea needs it more than Charlotte, because if Rhea does not win the title, what are you...
That's exactly why I think Charlotte's going to hang on. That's exactly why.
Because then what happens to Rhea Ripley? She has really established herself as the leader of the...
See, part of me thinks that they might continue the feud for another month, and then that's where Rhea takes us. The only reason my gut might say Charlotte keeps it for a little while longer, I just think Asuka, though, would be likely to take the title from Bianca, because I don't think there's anywhere else you can go with Bianca. But something tells me here I see Charlotte hanging on for like one more month and this feud continues. The only reason why I see maybe Charlotte hangs on.
Yeah, we saw it last year. Everyone thought Rousey was going to win it at WrestleMania last year, and she didn't. But no, I just feel with Charlotte how underwhelming she's been as a face. If Charlotte was a heel character, definitely I could say that the chance. But how underwhelming it's been, it doesn't make sense to keep the title on her at this point.
Well, we're going to find out certainly for sure next week in WrestleMania 30. And stay tuned because I think on Sportswire, we're going to have some type of coverage actually for WrestleMania 30. I'm going to try to fit it into my schedule. It looks like we might have an opening to do that. Also, Skull says the crowd will yell "Holy S" if Omos hits a shooting star press. I'm going to ask you one more question on wrestling. I want to get a few minutes on the NHL, but I have a lot of people tuned in who are wrestlers, by the way. So that's why I've been going as long as I can on wrestling because a lot of people tuned in. But what in the world is going on with CM Punk? If you were reading Twitter today, it would seem as if CM Punk was trending yet again. What is going on? There was something on Instagram that was deleted, a post of his, and I mean, what is this guy going to show up in a ring?
So there might be some heat now with him in AEW because apparently he came out and posted a story saying John Moxley refused to lose to him, and he was not medically cleared, which I think it definitely shows he was not medically cleared. He got hurt right after the match, and he think Dave Meltzer. Now Dave had done a lot
I
of
saw that.
like listen, as much as everyone can argue with Dave has done a lot of great work for wrestling. He opened a lot of doors for journalists in wrestling. So personal opinion aside or not, you can't argue. And then he said Jericho is something as well. Jericho's a loser as
You
well.
called him a stooge. You called him a stooge,
Yeah.
is what
So
he called him.
I definitely think that he did maybe that post right there could be hurting his chance of returning because people were saying they want him back. Tony Khan has said I want him back, but
Part of me feels like he's never coming back. To me, I think that we would have known already. We're talking, what, 8, 9 months now since the press conference?
the plan was to, from what I heard, Tony Khan wanted his arm to heal, his body to fully heal before they got into that. But I think at this point, the Elite's still there. They still want to resign. The AEW is trying to resign them after the rumor saying they may jump ship to WWE. When you have Jericho and Moxley as your locker room leaders, and they don't want a guy there, and if the boss goes off and does something else, it causes a shift because Jericho has been pro AEW. He said, I ain't going anywhere. I love AEW. This is the best place ever. But if CM Punk shows up, what did that change his opinion? Say, do I really want to be in AEW where this guy I don't like is here? He doesn't have
Fair
nothing else to
point.
prove.
Listen, and certainly you saw Twitter. There was some Dark Side of the Ring kind of a video posted about CM Punk, and Punk is certainly a controversial figure. He always was. And Craven Rage says, I know it's WrestleMania weekend, but Tom, Wrestling WC is getting ready to have their weekend as well. Luck of the draw, huge matches. We're talking about that Sunday night, Cheap Pop, 11 p.m. Eastern Time with Nicholas Crenson, the new Messiah, and Catalyst James Marshall. And also, he asked for everybody to certainly check us out. Certainly. And speaking of the NHL, I want to go into because Craven Rage, I didn't realize he's a New Jersey Devils fan. So I guess it looks like the New Jersey Devils are going to the NHL postseason for the first time here in about 5 years. And give me a few thoughts here on the NHL as we obviously get closer to the playoffs.
All right. So the Devils, they had a chance to clinch it tonight. They laid a goose egg against the Buffalo Sabres. They came close, but not a good start. They'll definitely clinch. It all about when they're going to play. But but for the Devils, very interesting who they're going to play because they're only 2 points behind Carolina for first in the Metro, and then on top of that, you got who could you play? Because the Islanders, they got a point, but they needed two to keep that lead alive. Pittsburgh lost a big game. The Capitals with a win, they're still kind of in the run. Florida, I don't know what the heck they're doing, but Ottawa, they can pull out a miracle, but it's still
Yeah,
up
I don't
in
know
the air
about
what's
Ottawa
gonna
pulling a
happen.
miracle out. Yeah, I don't know about Ottawa.
But and then you're wondering what's going on with Toronto and there's a lot happening in the NHL, but to look at the East, if I'm the Rangers, I'd rather have the Devils take first and you play the Hurricanes. Because the
Well, you
Hurricanes,
played them last year. Well, you beat them last year in the postseason. You had a lot of success against them. So theoretically speaking, from that vantage point, yeah. But I mean, you wouldn't want the Devils.
I wouldn't want the Devils because the goaltending questionable. Vitek Vanacek, he's kind of showing a performance he did last year with the Capitals, where he had a great couple of months, but when you needed him down the stretch, he couldn't find his game, and I'm seeing similarities to that. the Rangers are a little bit more experienced. They have a little bit more size than the Devils, but the Devils' speed and skill could be the difference maker there if it gets into a track meet. And we saw last year penalties were up, and that could favor a team like the Devils with a lot more skill. But you look at Carolina, no Shefnikov. They did nothing at the deadline to improve that team. The goaltending hasn't been great for that team. Listen, if I'm even one of the wild card team like the Islanders, I'm hoping I play a team like Carolina.
Well, I'll tell you this. I'm going to say it right now because the Islanders, I do think are going to make the play because it's really 3 teams for 2 spots. I know the Capitals have kind of hanging in there, but to
They
me,
need a miracle.
yeah, it's about the Islanders, the Penguins, and Anthony Finkel is tuning in. By the way, you're sending me a video on Instagram, bro. I'm live. I'm not going to see the video. The guy sends me a reel. Great guy, but sends me a reel on Instagram. I'm not going to view the reel right now, but I'm happy you're with us. Obviously, big shout out to Anthony Finkel. I know who called me, and I called him back, but unfortunately, I was attending to other things. But it's 3 teams for 2 spots. It's the Islanders, the Penguins, and the Panthers. And I will say this. If you are going to face the Boston Bruins, if you're the New York Islanders, considering how you've played them the last few years, to me, you're going to be bounced, especially with injuries with Nelson and Barzal, and who knows with Barzal. But, yeah, I mean, I guess if you face off with either the Devils or Carolina, you have a shot. I don't know how good of a shot, but to me, if I get Boston, even though I know Columbus beat Tampa a few years ago, I don't think a team like the Islanders, Pittsburgh, or Florida is going to give them much of a series.
The difference between the Bruins and the Lightning was a young team that they didn't have the experience. The team was just on the rise, really wanting to win. This is an experienced Bruin team that still has 3 members from that 2011 Cup run. They have a bunch of members of that 2019 run. The question is going to be their goaltending. They did a lot of good work at the deadline. They know what it takes to win. So if you're playing Boston, you might as well just light a candle and say a prayer.
And it's amazing, by the way, what Boston's done over the past decade. They've been pretty much, even though I know they've only got the 1 cup in the 2 finals appearances, but they've been pretty much this entire 13, 14 years a legitimate Stanley Cup contender almost the entire time. You have to give them a lot of credit, but I have to bring it up here before the rest of the Sportswire team comes on here. Connor McDavid reaches 60 goals. I was watching a little bit of the game here in America on TNT on Wednesday against the Coyotes, and the Oilers are on a hot run, and they had 3 players right now who looks like they're all going to get to 300 goals at the same time, which is, to me, so fascinating with Draisaitl, Kane, and McDavid. And, I mean, Connor McDavid, I mean, I think he's probably going to get to 150 points. We're talking 60 goals and close to 140 points, and you got to talk about this again.
He does something special, Connor McDavid. The year he's having, he's finally had good enough.
I don't think we'd ever have this kind of season again, if you think about it.
It hasn't happened, I think, since maybe the early 2000s.
I want to say Mario Lemieux, maybe?
Late 90s for someone to hit over 190. Like, we've had players hit over the 60 goal mark. Ovechkin, Stamkos.
Yeah, but they didn't do it. But they didn't do it with 150 points projection. They did it with like 98, 104, 106 points. I mean, this is like
this is another level, and he's just that good. And it's a big difference in what good players when you have some decent players that can help you out. Because in early years, he didn't have. He had filler guys that were just there to the lineup. He has guys like Zach. He has a very good player in Evander Kane. Maybe not a great person who makes great decisions, but he's a very good hockey player. Hyman has done a lot of great things, and Toronto definitely, I think, regrets getting rid of him. And you see the work he's done there. Draisaitl and Nugent Hopkins connecting, like everything's connecting with the Oilers. Jay Woodcroft letting this team pick up from where they did the offense. Defense is still in trouble. They have good guys that can carry the puck out, and Tyson Barrie, but now gone. Now you have Matthias Ekholm, Evan Bouchard, Darnell Nurse that time. Like, everything that went wrong in Connor McDavid for a few years ago is going right in the score sheet in the regular season, but now it's going to be the playoffs. Because, listen, if they play LA in the first round, there's a very good chance they get bounced.
Well, it will be a rematch of last year and Justin Gianelli. I also want to give a shout out to Uncle Ralph, who is leaving us because, well, it's 2:15 a.m. UK time. Time for bed. I say goodnight, and certainly Uncle Ralph will have more coverage here. And Justin says, I believe Timu Solani is the last to score 70 goals in a season. That was his rookie season. Correct me if I'm wrong. And McJesus has a chance to rip off 10 more goals. He's definitely got a shot. And the last player, by the way, to score 150 points, thanks to the crack staff, was Mario Lemieux back in '96. And then little known fact here, Randy. Jaromir Jagr scores 149 points that same season. But since then, nobody else has come close. That's amazing. I would have thought maybe Joe Sakic maybe would have hit that. I would have thought maybe Paul Correa or somebody like that. And Crosby never came close. And that's amazing to me that it's been that long. And it shows you the NHL and how offense has kind of picked up here. Where for a long time, you listen. I remember years. What was it? If somebody scored 100 points in a season, that was like, wow, somebody scored 100.
The 50 goal mark. Like, I think it was very rare we used to see that before Ovechkin came along. Like, I think it was maybe him, like the odd time Joe McGinley would score 50 some.
Yeah, that
goals.
one season. Yep, that one season. Yep.
Yeah, but definitely now, like players hitting 50, over the 100 points. Definitely a different NHL these days.
Absolutely, no question about that.
And
I
no
want to
one's
bring
taking
on.
off your head. That's the other thing. No one's taking off your head these days. So it helps.
Well, maybe it's for the best. And we are joined here before some of the guys from the Sportswire team come on here is Mr. Justin Gianelli of the New Jersey Devils. And obviously, sorry about the Devils not clinching a postseason spot. I imagine they will eventually. But we're talking here, just real quick. I mean, Connor McDavid, watching the game 2 nights ago and just again rarefied air we're talking about 1996 last time 150 points 140 points. You mentioned Solani 1993 70 plus goals in a season. This is just really special what we're seeing here.
Yeah, we're witnessing something that I don't think can be replicated. I think this might be the closest equivalent to Wayne Gretzky that we're ever going to get. I don't think there's anything anybody could do to ever supplant him as the greatest hockey player of all time. But I got to be honest, Connor McDavid's making a damn good case because, what he does on a nightly basis is just utterly incredible. It's like he's must watch TV. He's appointment television. He's tremendous. He makes plays. He gets in with his speed, and like you saw on the game winning goal, he had the breakaway. He just missed it, and he was able to go get the puck again, and then end up scoring, which will end
He
up
hit the
in
post. What was it? He hit the post on the
the
first
post
one
on
and the
the
second one
original
he came
because
back in.
he got in on the breakaway, and with that kind of speed, you're just not a defenseman is not going to be able to get back on defense when he's coming in on the goaltender with that kind of speed. It's just simply unbelievable, and we're witnessing greatness before our eyes. That's for sure.
Oh, no question about it. And thanks to the crack staff for giving this stat. Really, you think about it, 1993, which kind of oddly enough was kind of the season for all these players to score. Pat LaFontaine, obviously ex-Islander, had 148 points. You had Mario Lemieux did that, I think, on a season where he missed a bunch of games. It says here 160 points. Adam Oates, who would have thought Adam Oates would have scored 140 points in a season? But he did that. Timu Solani, as Justin brought up, 76 goals. And ex-Islander Pierre Turgeon, obviously famously Islander fans or like Chris remember obviously the whole first round incident with Dale Hunter, and that kind of in some ways might have been the long run maybe hurt the Islanders. Steve Yzerman definitely would have expected him to have hit 130 plus points, and then that's it. And after that, just two players, Yager and Lemieux, and just kind of
if you think about McDavid's career for a second, remember he got hurt his rookie year, so he only ended up with 48 points, but then he had 100, 108. 116, and then in the COVID year, the year it got shut down from COVID, he ended up with 97 points in 64 games. He was easily going to eclipse 100. And then the NHL came back with that shortened 56 game season.
Yep, where everybody played only in your division practically.
Yeah, and he dropped 105 points in 56 games, and then he's coming off 123 last year, and now he's got the 138 in every opportunity to drop 150 points this year.
And let's not forget about the other thing with McDavid. Some of those earlier, he played with the likes of Milan Lucic, Ty Ratty, Zach Cassian, some like not the greatest players, and he still managed to put up close to 100 points or a little bit more. So
yeah, he's definitely got a bit of a better supporting cast now. I know not all the time, but they occasionally do put Draisaitl up on that top line. But sometimes they do like spreading them out just to kind of balance the scoring a little bit. But he's got much better players to work with right now. And you listed some of the guys earlier, especially Zach Hyman. You still got Nugent Hopkins there. So the Oilers are a pretty good hockey team. We all know what they're just missing.
It's just I just want to go back to this because you think about in sports and what McDavid is doing. Certainly, if this was going on in the NFL or in the NBA, and to an extent, Major League Baseball, I kind of feel that this would be spoke about much, much more. And what McDavid is doing, to me, it's kind of similar to, again, not to say he's on anything, reminds me of the Barry Bonds years of 2001, 2002, 3, 4, where, I mean, he's putting up numbers. Randy, I mean, I rattle them off thanks to my crack staff. We're talking 30 years. 30 years since anybody put up these kind of numbers. And we thought, listen, as hockey fans, we're all hockey fans here. We thought even 5 years ago, nobody would have even came close to these numbers.
No, I think like people would look at the 100. You'll hit 100, maybe 100.
That was a big deal. 50 goals and 100 points. Wow. Yeah. If you had 50 goals and 100 points, you are a superstar.
You're getting paid.
Yeah.
You're going to get paid $10 million, but for him, he's getting paid that, and he's putting up more. I think it just shows you like how good he is. I know a lot of talk is about Connor Bedard. He's going to be better than McDavid, but
got a lot to live up to.
Yeah, there's a lot of.
David's put up quite the resume to start his career.
Exactly, like he had a lot of expectations to live up to of what Connor McDavid has done and what he continued to do. So it also depends where he's drafted, but the pressure's on him, and yeah, it's just amazing because you go back like even NBA, like you look at guys like Kobe Bryant, LeBron James, like
James Harden for a while, a couple years back with the Rockets, was putting up ridiculous numbers like 34 points a game, 35 points a game. Durant has done it, but I just, really, if this was in another sport, what McDavid has done, I just think he would be front page.
Not just that. I think playing in Edmonton is a big factor. Like because even though he didn't put up quite the numbers McDavid is, Patrick Kane had some massive seasons, and Patrick Kane being in Chicago got talked about.
They also won. They were winning too.
If McDavid was a Ranger, or if McDavid was a Blackhawk, or
a Maple Leaf, for example, like look at last year.
Even on the team like the Maple Leafs, it gets talked about a whole lot more. But the fact that he's out in Edmonton. Games are usually at 9, 10 o'clock at night on the East Coast. It's difficult to really get a good chance to see Connor play on a nightly basis, and I think unfortunately he gets a little bit lost with that.
Well, maybe absolutely. We're figuring out the U.S. market why they're not getting their ratings are down. They got to get more games with McDavid on there.
I think so, and I think also that's certainly something that's been talked about on Twitter when it comes to the coverage by ESPN and TNT, which to me does feel so uneven. I mean, these games, I know ESPN has the ESPN Plus package here in America. I know you have TSN, you have RDS, I think, for the Canadian French person. CBC, I think, still does some games here and there. Right? Sportsnet. I mean, but in terms of the coverage here in America, I mean, I much more prefer the NBC sports coverage compared to what we have now, because you have the Wednesday nights on TNT. They do weekends here toward the end of the season, so you get the ABC package. But the coverage, it's not dedicated to the NHL by far. And Carlos Otoro Chavez says here, Connor has tenacity and is persistent. McDavid also doing big things in a small market. Yes, we touched upon that. Similar to Messier, Adams, and Gretzky. I
wouldn't say Edmonton's a small market. I would say Edmonton is not a market that get the adjustments.
Well, it's not Montreal. It's not Montreal, Toronto, but
exactly.
But in terms
it's a small market in retrospect to the fact that in the United States it kind of loses place.
Exactly.
Like I think Toronto I think Toronto being what they are in an original six franchise, the same with the Canadians when they're good. Both being original six teams, I think that plays a factor as well. Both teams being on the East Coast, I think that plays a major factor as well.
And Toronto is essentially like almost America. I mean, if you think about where Toronto is on the map, literally Toronto.
Absolutely, yeah, it's really.
I always make the joke.
It's really not that far of a drive from.
No,
Buffalo.
not at all. And I almost make the joke. It's almost like for those that are listening to me on Staten Island, it's like Brooklyn and Staten Island. Literally, if you go look on the map, the Verrazano Bridge, it's like, okay, here's Staten Island and here's Brooklyn. They're a few minutes from each other. It's almost like Toronto and certainly America. You have Detroit also in Buffalo nearby. So obviously, we'll see here. And anything else you want to throw out here, Randy, before I obviously bring on the rest of the Sportswire team? I'm actually surprised some of them aren't here with us. But any other NHL stories you're watching here?
NHL stories. The other one I'm kind of interested is in the West. Can the Jets hang on? Because listen,
I asked you about that a couple of weeks ago. I asked you.
The Calgary Flames, they're literally, I don't know what they're thinking of doing. But
the Nashville Predators are the team.
That's the thing. The Predators are putting out wins. And listen, for David Poile's last year of GM, just imagine this. You trade away guys like Nino Niederreiter, Tanner Jeannot, get some big packages, and somehow you squeak into the playoffs.
Well, I asked you that question last month, and I remember asking you when the Predators were starting to pick up steam. You're like, nah, they're going to fall off, and yet they've kind of hung in there. I think 6 points back with a game in hand. I mean, they're right there. And Winnipeg's slumping, like you brought up.
Yeah, the Jets, definitely the slump of the Jets and the Flames have been key here. UC Saros has found his game. Everyone's just connecting on this team. Like, I think when I did my previous show with Justin, we had the Predators as a playoff team. They were supposed to clinch, but they were just so inconsistent. They couldn't find their game. And after them trades and after the deadline, they really have come together and really have done a great job.
That's what's selling off some pieces too.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely, and the crack staff wants to correct me that actually the Predators have 3 more games in hand over Winnipeg and are 5 points back. So if you do the math, Nashville could squeak into the postseason. And then also looking at over here in the Eastern Conference, just to recap before we bring on Rob Maraska, the Islanders and Penguins are separated by 3 points, and the Penguins have 1 game in hand on the Islanders, and the Panthers are 1 game back from the Penguins. So that is certainly going to be.
It's amazing. For the longest time over the last few weeks, we've been talking about, can the Islanders hang on? They've played so many more games than others. Well, that's over now. There's a couple teams that maybe play 1 or 2 less games, but there was a time where the Islanders were.
Remember when the Sabres had like 5 games in hand, and the Islanders.
And I even said, I really feel like the Islanders could hold on because I don't trust the other teams to really take advantage of it, and they really haven't. And now the Islanders look like they're in pretty solid shape to make the postseason.
I think they are. I think it's a 3-team race, and I think you got to give them credit.
Watch tomorrow's game between the Capitals and the Penguins. The Capitals can somehow get a win. I think they can kind of get themselves back with only being 2 points behind, but if they lose, then
if you get the 1 point
the team I fear and the team I think that maybe ends up sliding into that second spot is going to be Florida, though.
I said it a couple weeks ago, and Randy, you were like, "Nah, they don't. I don't think the goaltending, but
they laid a goose egg against." My concern with Florida is you play some good hockey, but you lay a goose egg against a team like Philly, where you need the win.
And Toronto at home, you can't give up 6
Toronto,
goals.
I can understand. Toronto's a good team. They have a good pizza, but when you're playing Philly on a back-to-back, like you still gotta come there. But that's the game you gotta win.
Yeah, absolutely.
And by the way, there's some massive games tomorrow. You got the Panthers playing the Rangers tomorrow. The Hurricanes are playing the Maple Leafs. The Lightning are
Buffalo and the Islanders tomorrow at UBS. Buffalo
and the Islanders.
Big games, definitely with a lot of implications. So, like
Boston,
this weekend really could determine the playoffs with a few weeks away.
All right. Well, we've been joined here by a couple of people here. Rob Maraska and the Brute Force Brad Weiss. Certainly going to talk some March Madness in a little while. I got Rob Maraska in a contest. Spend a little bit of time on baseball, but Randy, I'm going to obviously segue into some other sports. So obviously enjoyed a lot of the wrestling talk. I know a lot of the wrestlers really enjoyed that. They always do when we speak about that on Sportswire. So want to turn it over to you, give you some closing thoughts. Obviously very happy to have you back with us on some good news here. Always like the good news. And I turn it over to you. Anything else you want to plug, share, say? The floor is yours, my friend, and fire away.
Thanks, Tom. I'll wrap it up quick here. For follow, you can follow me on Twitter at Randy Dillon. Dillon spelled Dillon. Same with Instagram. We're not going to have a new chat of the episode of the Hockey Fan Chat in the next little while. Hopefully, close to playoffs, we'll have an episode. Hopefully, get Justin Gianelli to join me again. Always love working with him. And just before I go, I just want to mention one thing on AEW quickly with the 4 pillars. I'm very interested to see how that works between MJF, Darby Allin, Sammy Guevara, and Jungle Boy, because I only see one guy walking out that match, and that's MJF at this point. None of the other guys sell me if they do that match.
Well, they call that that's your filler to keep your champion working. That's one of those where it's just not a believable one here. But we'll definitely talk about that on next week's show. And thank you as always. Everybody can follow Randy Dillon at Randy DHILLON. So make sure you follow him and also the Hockey Fan Chat. Enjoyed the show with you and Jess. I think I used it a couple of times when I was actually live, certainly getting ready. So I always like to have one of these little mini shows, and you definitely did that for me. So thank you so much, my friend. Great to have you back, and looking forward to our usual spots going forward, buddy.
Thanks, Tom. Take care, everyone.
All right, and that was Randy Dillon of the Hockey Fan Chat joined with us, and we're joined here by Rob Maraska and the Brute Force Brad Weiss. Obviously, the Brute Force looks like he's been on the court. Obviously, I'm sure not too thrilled about his bracket. We'll definitely get into that in a little while. Obviously, some interesting standings there we'll throw out there, but obviously we spend a few minutes on baseball. We'll talk about first, Rob Maraska. You got this big contest. I know everybody on Twitter is talking about, but I don't think everybody's tuned in on Facebook here. That's okay. I kind of expected that, but you got to maybe put one of these tweets out there to say tune in on Facebook, because that's the way you got to get these people to come in here. It's great though. But obviously, for those that are listening and watching, we'll definitely post a clip, and you can certainly tag me on the announcement when you do it. Tell us who has won here. This very beautiful Shohei Ohtani 2023 Topps limited edition card, and tell us anything else you want about this contest.
Yeah, it just came in today, actually, the cards, so perfect timing. And it was, I have to tell you, it was a bigger contest than the Aaron Judge one, which was huge. And I know it's mostly on Twitter. I'm gonna tell them to look for the show on Facebook.
Yeah, you gotta tell them, because I love to see the 150 likes, but let's get them 150 people on Facebook. With Twitter, you can never do that anyway because of engagements, and people just don't do it. I get it, but it's just my random thought.
But they do check out the clips, which are good, and we're out there. But the winner this time is Kayla LaRose from Patton, California. Her Twitter is at Kayla2828, and there were so many entries that it just took some time to pick the winner. It just went.
So how long did it take you to actually pick a winner? I mean, the Brute Force would have took him a couple of days to pick a winner. How long would it took you to get a winner?
It took me about an hour or so.
All right, that's a while, actually. That's longer than I would have anticipated. Okay.
I had so many, especially once Japan won the WBC, forget it. It just blew up. And I had so many people wanting to get this card. It is a nice looking card.
Oh, absolutely. No, I was thinking of you, actually. I was in a I guess you would say it's almost like a BP with a Burger King in Brooklyn somewhere, and I saw the top 2023 cards, and I'm like, oh, Rob Maraska is going to have this contest and announce that. So certainly, congratulations, and repeat the winner one more time for those that are listening and watching.
Kayla LaRose, and her Twitter name is Kayla2828 from Patton, California. So an Angels fan actually won it.
Wow, okay. All right. Well, I got to ask Anastasia Riznia where Patton, California is, because I admittedly don't know where Patton, California is. If somebody wants to tell me, I'd certainly be very happy to talk about that here. So congratulations on the big win. I look forward to you hopefully tuning in with us and follow Rob Morosco. Rob Morosco. So let's talk about that. Obviously, Chris Pizzea also here with us from the Talking Rivals. So we got almost the full lineup here that's usually with us. So also, Anastasia says, I think you meant Anastasia. Yeah, did I say it right? Did I say it wrong? Or did I say, what did I say wrong here or right? Or Patton, California. Tell me where Patton, California is also. But obviously, hi to the very, very friendly and lovely Anastasia Riznia. But WBC, let's talk about that because I'll warm up to the brute force later on when it comes to the March Madness and Dolan time because it ain't Dolan time right now. But what would you guys' impressions of the WBC and Japan winning it here? I'll go with Justin first. I see you nodding. And for those that are listening and watching, talk about your impressions on this year WBC.
I thought the WBC was tremendous. I think they, no pun intended, they hit a huge home run with this event. I mean, it was sold out crowds. It was locked into the TV. I mean, it was something like 94.7% or something like that of TVs in Japan watched the final. You know, in the US, I think there was a couple million viewers as well for the WBC final. And I think just if you're looking to grow the sport of baseball, I think this was exactly how to do it. And you had all these countries with all this intrigue, and obviously you had the big crowds for the earlier games like Puerto Rico versus the Dominican Republic. The U.S. had some good crowds out in Phoenix when they were playing the pool round, and then you got to the quarterfinals, semifinals, and the elimination round. U.S. You had the dramatic game between USA Venezuela where Trey Turner hit the grand slam. You had Japan versus Mexico where Japan was down to their last licks and they pulled off the comeback. And then the final, which was epic, and we got what we could have dreamed of. Shohei Ohtani versus Mike Trout in the biggest spot of the game, and unfortunately, as an American, Ohtani got the best of Trout in that at that. But overall, the tournament was absolutely tremendous. It really was.
No question about that. And I also want to give a plug to Rob Marasa because Carlos Otoro Chavez II says, "What's the Twitter info for Rob at R Marasca?" So make sure you follow Rob Marasca. Chris, obviously, I'll get to the Brute Force next, but good to be with you. I know, obviously, I was listening to you and Patrick on this week's Talking Rivals show. Speak a little bit about this, plus much, much more as we're getting ready for opening day, and the Brute Force will be out there for the Mets series next week out there in Miami. Speaking of the WBC, and give me your impressions on the WBC overall. Now it's come to a close, and also now that Japan has won this year's WBC, the first since 2017.
Yeah, how you doing, guys? Yeah, I think Justin said it all. I think he said it all about the finale was exactly what they wanted, right? A close game between U.S. and Japan, the two favorites basically in the tournament. So many great games, especially down the stretch. There was a couple of really good ones there. I mean, I don't think it could have went any better. It couldn't have finished any better with Trout versus Ohtani. 3-2, 2 outs in the bottom of the ninth. I mean, you can't get any better than that. And like Justin said, like 96% or whatever it was of TV sets in Japan were watching it. So it was basically the most watched baseball game ever, they were saying, in history, that finale. So I don't think Major League Baseball could have asked for anything more than that, or the game of baseball. Talk about growing the sport. I don't think you can grow it any more than what they have over the years with the WBC. It's a great thing. We kind of went back and forth about when's the best time to do it, whether it's at the All-Star break or now, when they have been doing it, or maybe after the season. I don't think there's ever going to be that perfect time to do it, but this was a perfect tournament. Couldn't have went any better, and can't wait for the next one in 3 years.
We'll certainly find out here. I got a couple of comments from Carlos. He says, biggest issue is time of game for U.S. fans. I mean, look, you're trying to keep everybody watching, right? You're trying to keep everybody happy. And, certainly when you deal with time zones, you deal with different things here. So, I mean, obviously, yeah.
Yeah. It is an issue, but they started at 7:00, and I think that is maybe. Oh, I was gonna say maybe going forward we could start the World Series at 7:00, but now with the pitch clock in Major League Baseball, 8:00 aren't going to be so late. You're probably going to be done around 10:30, so it's really not the end of the world. But here's something that I read here. They averaged 4.48 million viewers for the World Baseball Classic Final, and it ranked third amongst television for the entire night. The Voice and a rerun of FBI were the only two programs.
Rerun of FBI.
Those are the only two programs that had
Now, The
more
Voice I
viewers.
would have got. The Voice would have made sense, but a rerun of FBI, the brute
those are the
force,
only-
did you have
those are
that
the
on,
two
like,
programs.
on
But it also
TV?
was on
Like,
Fox Sports. It wasn't on Fox. Maybe that would help.
That's true. It was
Gotcha.
4.48 million viewers, and if you count Fox Deportes, 4.97, and it had bigger viewership than all but one MLB game from 2022. The only game that ranked higher was Game 4, Padres, Phillies, NLCS.
Was that the game that ended in extra innings, or am I missing? Was that the fifth game where the Phillies won it? Was that
I think it was
that was the
4.
Friday night game? Was that Friday night game 4 something like that? Was it a Friday or Saturday night game? I think it was a Saturday night game that was up against college football, if I'm trying to remember correctly. Because Sunday was the 4:00 game, I think, and the Phillies wound up clinching that. So that's interesting here. I would never have guessed the rerun of the FBI. Maybe Anastasia Riznia was watching that 4.4 million times. But the Brute Force Barrowwise, obviously, want to bring you on here in WBC. I mean, were you watching it this year? I mean, I got to be honest, I didn't watch a lot of it this year because I've been so preoccupied with like 18,000 different things. I try to watch it, but for me, unfortunately, March and into early April is a very, very busy time of the year, almost like for you in the basketball year for different reasons. But I mean, what was your impressions of it? And are you surprised that many people tuned in, and thoughts on Japan winning the whole thing?
Yeah, so what's going on, guys? Happy Friday night once again. So listen, I did actually watch a few of the last couple games, which is actually saying a lot because
I was going to say, you found time
this
to actually watch the WBC?
I mean, this time of year I'm watching, right now I'm watching obviously a lot of March Madness on both.
Can't wait to bring up your bracket, by the way. Can't wait.
No, we don't want to bring that up. But anyway,
I don't think anybody's brackets.
and not only that, Chris, I mean, I've been watching the women's and men's, and I filled out for both, and I've stunk in both. So it's really been depressing with the brackets. But that's part of the reason why I was watching the WBC. But to be quite honest with you, what everybody said was correct. I mean, it's a very good event. Obviously, we all, as New York Mets fans, cannot say it was perfect because it devastated me seeing Edwin Diaz hurt. And obviously, I am very disappointed that I cannot listen to Narco this year at Citi Field. So I am very disappointed. With that being said, we all know it was a freak injury. It wasn't the WBC's fault. As you can see, it can happen anywhere. You just saw with Rhys Hoskins in spring training. So it's not WBC's fault. When we talk about perfect, obviously, for Mets fans, it wasn't. But ultimately, the event itself was fantastic. There's nothing short of fantastic. Obviously, they did a great job. I will say also, I got a really good friend of mine, Tom, who is Mexican, and he wanted me to come watch Mexico against Japan with him. So I'm like, all right. So I watched the game, and he was going nuts when Mexico was going crazy, was winning. Everything was going right, and then all of a sudden, you couldn't hear a pin drop out of his mouth in the last couple innings because he was devastated, obviously, when they lost, but he was really nervous. I mean, Japan.
Were you watching it in, like, let's say, like a Mexican compost, like a bar hub? For
No. Listen, we were watching at his apartment. So.
Okay, all right. Because I would have said, "Wow, the brute force." I give you a lot of credit if you go into.
No. But listen, either way, it was exciting. The game was great. The United States game against Japan was great as well. Listen, I got to be the brute force, so I got to be a little, tough and controversial. Because, when the United States has got Merrill Kelly pitching, Merrill Kelly, all right, that to me is the only thing that I could put a blemish on this, is that how do we have Merrill Kelly pitching the championship game for the United States? I understand. Obviously, I'm not going to go into it because I understand why. Okay, but ultimately, the United States competed but Japan was clearly the best team. They really were. Ohtani obviously is a stud. That guy from the Red Sox, I forgot his name already, is a stud in the making. The one who hit that golf home run. Oh my God, the one against Mexico. That pitch he hit a home run on was ridiculous. I mean, that guy's going to be a stud too. So I was very intrigued. Like I said, it was exciting. And the one thing I'll say, Tom, since I will be in Miami in a week, is that there is absolutely no way that the crowds will be as big as they were in Miami for the WBC. There probably won't be anyone on the upper deck.
You'll have plenty of leg room.
Oh yeah, but
to be fair though, the first weekend I think there will be pretty good crowds, but because the Mets are there.
That's correct. So, and plus, the game I'm going to on Thursday, I'm sitting with the 7-line army. We have over 2,000 people in the 7-line going to be there.
Now, you're dressing up for this with the 7-line army. What's the arrangement? I want to know. I don't care so much about your thoughts on the WBC. I actually want to know more about what is going. Are you going to be in garb? Are you going to how are you going?
Well, first of all, if you guys don't know, when you go on to 7-line army trips, which I, have done, this is my second time now. They give you a shirt, so everybody wears the same shirt. So I'll be in the crowd. I'll probably be the tall guy. You probably see me on TV if they show it, because I'll be the obvious tall guy in the crowd. All right, but I'll be there. I'll be wearing the shirt. I have 2 new jerseys. I got Alonso and Lindor. I got to decide which one. All right, but ultimately, I'm really excited. But listen, to get back to WBC real quick, I really enjoyed it. Like I said, it's not crazy to me that I was watching that over basketball, which obviously is my number one sport. So to watch, obviously, but baseball, it is baseball season. So it was exciting. Like I said, it would have been perfect with Edwin Diaz staying healthy, but ultimately we move on from that. It's now time for Mets baseball, and I'm just happy to know that was such a successful event, and it'll be interesting to see the difference, like I said, in the crowd size in Miami on Thursday.
We'll certainly find out. I'll ask you.
I got a rebuttal for the brute force here, because I'm not going to accept Merrill Kelly slander on this Friday night. I'm not going to accept that. Listen, I get it. They didn't have the best of the best pitchers for Team USA. Verlander wasn't there, Scherzer wasn't there, Cole wasn't there, but they did have some pretty good pitchers, and it kind of lined up that he probably was the best of the bunch that was actually on the roster. And listen, he was really good last year. So
hey, they only gave up 3
runs. I'm not going to accept Merrill Kelly slander.
When you say these things, by the way,
that's actually, to Chris's point, that was a very big point, is that it was actually crazy because you went into that game against Japan probably, scared about the pitching. The pitching did a great job. So they did their job. So listen, like I said, I had to be the brute force. I had to have something to pick up. Right? But I had to pick up Merrill Kelly. But Justin's point, he's a very solid pitcher. I mean, he made the point. We didn't have maybe the top-notch guys, but these guys are no scrubs. They're good pitchers, and Merrill Kelly is definitely a quality pitcher in the major leagues.
All right, let me get to a few comments before I bring in Rob Maraska. Also says here, pitch clock was not used in this WBC, and he says, going forward, the only terrible viewership for the WBC was actually U.S. fans. What a shame, basically. Well, I mean, look, in America, you got a lot of different things to compete. In these other countries, it's a big deal, and certainly give those countries credit for their rabid fan base and audience. And Rob Maraska, obviously, I know you were keeping an eye on the WBC, and give me your thoughts on the overall tournament that was, and Japan winning it like the rest of these guys here. The first WBC we saw since 2017.
Well, I was actually into it this year. This is the first time I really got into it, and I enjoyed it. You know what? Unfortunately, Diaz gets hurt, but it could have happened in spring training, like the brute force said. But the games were excellent. I enjoyed Japan-Mexico a lot. I watched that whole game. It was just an exciting game. The ending to it was exciting. The final, another great game, 3-2. I mean, Mark DeRosa left in the same lineup. I don't know why he didn't play around a little. I think, and not because I'm a Met fan, but I think that Jeff McNeil just sat too much. He should have played more. He definitely should have played more. In the final, he was up to not official at bats because he walked twice, but he got on base. He did what he does, and he just didn't play enough. So that's my one thing I have to say about Mark DeRosa. But other than that, it was good. It's good for baseball internationally. Those fans are going crazy. Japan, I mean, could you imagine 96% of television watchers in Japan watch that game? It's just amazing. So you know what? Major League Baseball hit a home run with this.
Well, we actually have some comparison to the 96%. The Brute Force, when we do coverage for our Golden Eagles, I can assure you that we get probably about 96, maybe even more % of those fans that tune in when we have Golden Eagles coverage, because we're going to be having more coverage of that cheap pop Tuesday night with the legendary Money Matt Hurt, your former teammate. So I would say we actually do have that as a comparison. I think I had on boxer Mark the Tank Ellens, and we literally had the whole town view in. So there was about 2,000 people, but we had the whole town here. But enough about that. I do, because obviously next week is the season's coming up here for our two local teams, the Mets and Yankees. I want to go around the room before we go on to some other things here. So let's go Yankees first. And I want to get a Yankees prediction here from everybody around the room. Where do we think the Yankees will be? And I'll go with you, Chris, first, because obviously you're a Yankees expert. You and Patrick obviously cover the Yankees and certainly the Red Sox and the rest of Major League Baseball in the Talking Rival Show, which you can catch on sportnarium.com/player, the flagship of Sportswire Radio. And where do you think the Yankees will finish this year when it comes to this year's American League East and more?
I like them winning the division. I know the first month's going to be tough because they have the injuries. Two of their starters are going to be out for at least the first month. Montas, you're not going to get back until, August probably. So, but I think with the depth that they have, they're going to be okay. I think they have to get through that first month, but this team is loaded. And then we got to see. I mean, there's going to be moves. There's going to be trades. Obviously, this is not the same team that's going to start the playoffs, at the end of the year either. So I think the Yankees are going to win the division. And if they could go into the playoffs healthier than they were last year, I think they could get past the Astros this year finally. But staying healthy and getting into the playoffs healthy, it has been the biggest challenge for the Yankees over the last few years. Last year, we had a third of the starting lineup out. And that definitely affected us offensively for sure. But hopefully this year they can stay healthy, and that's what it's going to come down to. And I think having the young kids like Volpe and Peraza on this roster, I think to get some youth going, I think that's going to help us out. So hopefully that'll keep this team a little more energized and healthier by the end of the year and heading into the playoffs healthier, and maybe hopefully we'll finally get past the Astros this year and get to the World Series again.
Yankees obviously haven't been to the World Series since 2009, which is a long time when you think about the Yankees. Yeah, it's a lifetime. I mean, for the Mets, hey, listen, we get there every 9 or 10 years. We make a cameo. All right, we're happy. Yankee fans, for them, making the postseason is not good enough. It's about getting to that World Series and winning it. And this is the longest drought for the Yankees since 81 to 96, and that felt like a lifetime. And for you, Justin, then, I mean, what do you think the Yankees will wind up doing this year in the regular season? If they get to the postseason, how far you think they go?
I think this team's going to win 91 ball games this year, but I do think that's going to land them 2 games short. I think the Blue Jays are going to win the division this year, and I have the Yankees flaming out in the American League Division Series.
Okay,
I think you're gonna see. I'm going out on a limb. I think you're seeing the Mariners in the World Series.
Wow, the Seattle Mariners, who made their first postseason appearance in 2001, and that was a long drought in itself. And
I really do think, real quick, I know we're not going to talk about the other American League teams. I do think the Altuve injury is going to affect Houston to the point where I think Seattle can get off to a fast enough start that they can kind of edge them off for the division.
Interesting. So we see Seattle, Houston is certainly being competitive in the West. Obviously, in the American League East, we assume Yankees, Toronto, Tampa, and then in the Central, I guess it's Cleveland, Minnesota.
Minnesota's going to be pretty good. Minnesota could definitely win the Central. but we all know they lose in the first round.
Yeah, Minnesota hasn't certainly gone very far. The brute force, obviously, Yankees certainly have been a big topic as always here on this show and certainly throughout the offseason. And I mean, how far do you think this team actually goes? Do they make it to the postseason? Do they go deep? Or what's your overall impressions on the Bronx Bombers?
Well, let me be clear. I'm not going to do what I did last year, which is, Justin picked Toronto. Last year I picked Toronto. I hyped them up. I talked trash about the Yankees. I'm not going to do that this year. Right? I'm going to actually agree with Chris. I think Chris is right. I think they're going to win the division. That's number one. I think they're going to win the division. I do think Justin's in the right range of wins. He said 91. I see Fangraphs has it at 90. So I do think it's going to be roughly around that 90 to 93. I think that's what they'll do. But I hate to be the party pooper. All right. I just think at some point, Chris, they're going to run into the Astros, and then when they do, they're going to go down. That's what I think. I just think it's one of those things. I mean, I know every Yankee fan is hoping, and listen, I've been hoping for years for many of my teams to break the curse against other teams. It never happens. But listen, the Astros have the Yankees number. I know, to Justin's point, Altuve's injury is going to be important, at least early on. But I do think by October they'll be running, as they always do, at a high level. And I just think the Yankees will run into them again and ultimately lose to them again. So that's what I'm going to say for the Yankees.
And
by the way, even though I didn't specify it, because I did say the Yankees would end up losing to the Mariners, I actually do think the Yankees will beat the Astros in the wild card round.
Interesting. Wow. That's interesting. Chris certainly.
Astros in the wild card. That's interesting too.
Yeah. I think they will. I think I would have them at some order of 4-5.
Oh, very interesting. Very, very interesting. And I'm really curious to see what happens there in the American League West. Obviously, Seattle certainly has made a lot of strides the past couple of years. And Houston, if you think about the last 8 years, have been in the postseason 7 times and obviously have 2 World Series to show for it. They've been kind of the standard bearer, not just in the American League, but I could argue in baseball. Even though they've had interchangeable parts, they continue to win. And for you, Rob Maraska, Yankees certainly always a big topic. And where do you think this team will wind up after the 2022 season? 23 season.
I think the Yankees will win the division, so I agree with Chris and brute force on that. I don't think Toronto's going to win. For some reason, Toronto always finds a way not to win lately. The past couple of years, we thought Toronto was going to win. Toronto did not win. I think the Yankees will. And if the Yankees don't get off to a great start, and I don't mean the first month because of the injuries, but I mean, throughout the summer, I don't want to have to start talking about Boone again,
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, do you really think they're going to talk about Boone? I mean,
time is a flat circle, Rob. What's going to happen. We're going to be right back.
Go a whole season without talking about Aaron Boone. Come on.
Rob, it's going to be July 26th, and the Yankees are 54-50, and we're talking about Boone again.
Yeah, of course. But I think I agree with Justin. I think Seattle's going to go pretty far, but I think the Yankees don't get past Houston anyway, as usual. So we'll see what happens, but I think the Yankees will win the division. I don't see Toronto winning it.
Well, I guess you could say one point before we move over to the Mets. Certainly here when it comes to the New York tabloids and especially the sports writers here, whether it's the New York Post, the New York Daily News, whether it's anybody else, Newsday, the Staten Island Advance, if that's still a thing, although they really don't write much sports these days. That's kind of an inside joke there. But, they're not going to have much to talk about because you won't have anything else going on. So, I mean, maybe you will continue to get the Boone talk, especially if the Yankees are kind of in that predicament. We'll have to see. I kind of think that the Yankees will still have a strong season, end up certainly somewhere in the postseason that could make them a strong contender, considering based off the teams in the American League. But let's go over to the New York Metropolitans, the other team here, obviously, in the city of New York that plays in the borough of Queens County. And Chris, I mean, what's your predictions on this team? Obviously, this team certainly, I think, does take a setback no matter what the Met fans may say when it comes to the Edwin Diaz injury. And obviously, it's a team that's going to have certainly a very, very tough schedule ahead, some tough teams in the National League East and a very, very challenging league. I mean, where do you think this team ends up?
You know what? I think the Mets are going to win. Excuse me. I think the Mets are going to win the division this year because I think they make a big and bold move at some point this season, right? I think with obviously you mentioned Diaz, yeah, that's definitely going to take a hit to them. But I think they make a big bold move this year, as opposed to last year when they were ahead. They should have made the move, and they didn't. They kind of laid back, and they made the minor move. They didn't make that major move. I think this is the year they're not going to, they're not going to, pick up a Vogelbach type of player. They're going to pick up an impact bat this year. They're not going to wait, and say, oh, well, we're doing fine. No, I think it's going to be they're going to be more aggressive. I see definitely a big move, maybe a Brian Reynolds, just a name out there. And maybe they pick up Bedard, their reliever as well, to help in the bullpen. But I still see the Mets winning it because as much as you like the Braves, on one hand, I don't like their bullpen. I don't like that closer situation. Iglesias lost his job with the Angels. He's been up and down his whole career. So I really don't like the Braves that much. The Phillies, on the other hand, yeah, I think they made their bullpen much better this offseason. But, you're not going to get Harper for maybe half the year. He's going to come back at some point. They lost Hopkins now for the whole season, so they got to replace him at first. So I'm going to still go with the Mets winning that division. I see them losing in the playoffs because I think the Padres are going to make it to the World Series. Mm-hmm. But I definitely think they're going to win the division. For sure.
The National League is very fascinating to me on a cluster of teams. So that's certainly some excellent points there. And obviously, Justin, I mean, I know you and John Stewart are going to do a preview show, I know, coming up here this week. I heard you mention it at the end of the baseball banter. I actually got to listen to We played a marathon back-to-back the last baseball banter with this one. So I actually got a chance. I was live here today, and I actually played it before I went live. So I had a chance to catch up on some of the shows on Sportswire. But, I mean, obviously, I know you're going to be in a lot of Met games at Citi Field once again. You're going to have a, obviously, wide open view with this team. And where do you think this team ultimately ends up going forward here in the 2023 season?
So I got them at around 94 wins, and I think they're going to. I do think they're going to win the division only because I'm just not. I didn't like the Braves offseason, and I know you're talking about the Edwin Diaz injury. I think when it comes down to it, you're not when you look at the Met bullpen. Yeah, it's going to suck to not have the dominance of Edwin Diaz. But when you look at David Robertson as a closer, he's a guy who can get the job done. It's probably going to leave you on the edge of your seat more often than not. But I think in the end, he's going to get the job done. And, I just don't, like Chris said about the Brave bullpen, I'm not so sure about that bullpen. I don't know that I fully trust Iglesias. Obviously, they lost Jansen to Boston in the offseason after he was there for 1 year. And even at the stage Jansen is, he's still a reliable closer more often than not. And I'm concerned. I'm a little bit concerned about Atlanta this year. And now Philly's offense just doesn't hit as scary as we thought it might. Obviously, half a season without Harper, Rhys Hoskins now out for the year. They're probably going to put all their eggs in the Derek Hall basket at first base. He's one of their top prospects, if I'm not mistaken. But he's going to get the chance at first base, and I just don't know what to really expect. Right, not 100% sold on Alec Boehm still. Obviously, Schwarber and Castellanos are good hitters. Castellanos is a good bounce back player. I think that Philly's still probably 3 of 3, and I think it's going to be between the Mets and Braves again. And I think they slightly beat them out. I don't see the Mets getting past the NLCS though. Unfortunately, like Chris mentioned, there's San Diego, certainly, and even though they leave a lot to be desired this year, and there's a lot more questions than answers for the first time in a long time, still can't really rule out the Dodgers because they might make a big splash too, come deadline.
They're the Dodgers. They've got the pocketbook, the wallet, like anybody. Yep.
But talk to me August 1st when Shohei Ohtani gets acquired. We might have a different conversation.
Well, we'll find out. And I want to go to the Brewforce last because he's got a confidence video, and I already got a message about this. So I'm going with you, Rob Maraska. You're the Met guy. You obviously follow this team like nobody else. So where do you think this team ultimately ends up here at the end of the 2023 season with the New York Metropolitans?
Well, I think they still win the division, like the guys said. I think it'll be Mets, Braves, Phillies. The Phillies offense did take a hit with Hoskins, but Derek Hall playing first base in the minor leagues, he had 28 home runs and 88 RBIs. So they're really gonna look for him to make an impact. So we'll see what happens with him. It could go either way. But I don't like the Braves bullpen either. I don't think the Braves made enough moves this offseason. So I'm going to have the confidence that the brute force is always talking about and say that the Mets will win the division. The Mets will make a big move. I think they learned last year by not really making that big push, and that hurt them. It hurt them in the playoffs. But
it reminds me. Yeah, go ahead, jump in. Go ahead.
Yeah, I don't see them going really far unless they really make a big splash at the trade deadline. And you never know who that could be. I mean, we know who we would like it to be, and we will see what happens. You never know what Cohen, but if that doesn't happen, the Mets will win the division, and we'll have to see what happens from there.
No question about it. And listen, I almost make before I get to the Brute Force, it reminds me of in 2019, the Islanders were in first place for most of that season. They didn't make a big splash, and the team kind of went and kind of folded after their first round sweep of the Penguins. But the following year, before COVID, they wound up acquiring John Gabriel Pajot, and when the season eventually restarted, the Islanders kind of went on a deep run, and they wound up going to the Eastern Conference Finals. So maybe the Mets learn from that offseason of 22. If they're in that predicament, we'll have to find out. But the Brute Force, Brad Weiss, obviously very, very curious to hear what you have to say about the New York Mets. Obviously, you were Mr. Confidence last year saying we don't got to worry about it. Don't worry about the Braves. You were basically not sweating it out there. And then we saw kind of what happened last year when it came to the National League East, obviously changing hands from the Mets to the Braves at the end of the regular season. So obviously, will you have confidence, or maybe you'll be a little more pessimistic this year, and maybe that'll help the Mets' chances? So for those that are listening and watching, what do you think the New York Mets will wind up doing in the 2023 season?
Tom, you're reading my notes because you're kind of taking my fuel to the fire here.
And you said that, by the way, at our last spot with the Golden Eagles, were you reading my notes? You did say
well, first of all, I want to know what this mystery comment is that you just referred to. Because I have a feeling I know who it is. All right, because I'm waiting for him to finally wake up. Because you know what? my speech right here, which by the way, please don't clip this, all right? Because I don't want anyone to hear this right now. Okay? But I'm gonna say it because listen, this man John Gonzalez, I have to say he's right, and I'm gonna go with him right now because he keeps putting me on Front Street about how every time I exude confidence, right? I exuded confidence in my bracket, it stunk. I put confidence in the Knicks. They lost 4 straight games. I put confidence in the Mets, and now I don't know what happened. So you know what I'm going to do, Tom Bryce? Even though I don't want this to happen, I want everyone to make clear, I do not want this to happen. I'm going to say the Philadelphia Phillies are winning the division this year.
Wow, I tell you what, the very, very bold.
All right, that's what I'm going to do. All right, you know why, Tom Bryce? Because I want, all right, and again, this is me. I want to put pressure on the Phillies, all right, because I'm going to say they're going to win, all right, and I think that when pressure gets to them, and I know, listen, they obviously had a great run, and they are a good team, but I do think that, this is a year where they could potentially collapse. They're not a team that, could be as consistent. Yes, they have so many great players, but ultimately we have to see them be consistent for more than a year or two in time. So I want to see that from the Phillies. I do think they'll have a good season. And right now, because I have to do it, I'm going to go with John Gonzalez. I'm going to obey and listen to him for once, okay, and say I'm going to go against the Mets. I'm going to go against my confidence right now because I know that right now, every time I say something's confident, it goes the other direction. All right, so I know that right now, if I pick the Phillies, the Mets will win the division. So I'm picking the Phillies. They're going to win this division. All right. What I do think, though, in all seriousness, is that I think the Mets will obviously make the playoffs. And if they do make the wild card game, there's a chance that they may link up with the Padres again. And I would really hope that the Mets could get some revenge on them because obviously that was a tough ending to last year. I know the Padres are a tough team, but I do want the Mets to meet the Padres some point in the playoffs and get their revenge because that was a very devastating, harsh game that I went to when Scherzer got knocked for 4 home runs while I'm sitting in the stands in that series. So let's hope that we can get them back.
All right, I have to ask this as a follow-up question, and not to be a contrarian here. We had a mystery comment from somebody that quote-unquote alleged that, are you smoking crack? And then saying further, Philly with question marks. But I'm not going to tell you who that individual is, but I'm going to certainly let you know what that individual had to say. But are you concerned maybe for your safety going up next week with Miami with you are going to sit with the 7-line army by going on the record here, especially for social media when we play the clip on Instagram, that you are going with the Philadelphia Phillies to win the National League East? Are you concerned, the Brute Force, for your safety?
No,
7-line army?
No, because listen, you know what? I can pull up all the clips of how many times I've said I hated the Phillies, I hate Bryce Harper, I hate the Fanatic. Okay, I made it clear that this is not exactly what I want to do. But if I explain to all these people what has been happening of recently, when every time I have exuded confidence, it has gone the wrong way, they will understand. All right, my bracket is epically horrible. Right after I said I was confident, it is not out of the realm that I went crazy about the Knicks' confidence and they've lost 4 straight games. So now I'm going to say confidently that the Phillies will win so that it does not go that way because I'm confident in it. And so far, when I'm confident in it, it goes to the trash can. That's basically what's happening. I got to agree with John.
We'll certainly have to find out. Certainly, Patchman Phil is right, the man behind the 7-line army. I'll be so curious to hear what he thinks here. And also, I got a bunch of comments here first before we move on. Carlos Otoro Chavez says the Mets will get about 90 wins. I think that was the consensus of everybody around the room. Mets and Yankees, 90 wins once again. Told you guys about the Knicks. Yeah, we'll get to the Knicks at the end of the show. And speaking of comments from individuals, we have here with us now the man behind the Sports Authorities Group. His name, is John Gonzalez. And he says, that's right, group. Obey your master. Quoting James Hetfield in Master of Puppets. Obey your master. Master. Certainly, Mr. Gonzalez might have been listening to a little bit of Master of Puppets there. But anything you want to say to Mr. Gonzalez, the Brute Force Brad Weiss? Certainly, he has been very closely tuned in here right now.
Of course he's tuned in. I mean, he waits for me to say something about him, and then all of a sudden he starts babbling on about his comments, all right? But listen, all right, I'm obeying today, all right? That don't mean I'm obeying going forward, all right? But today, when I have to make a prediction preseason, I know that this is the right thing to do because I know that it will go my way ultimately if I go this direction. So I'm going to say, John, you're right, okay? I don't say that a lot. John, you're right, all right? And I'm going with you for this week. All right, that does not mean we're agreeing in the future. But I actually really would like to know who John thinks is going to win the NL East. I want to hear from him ultimately because, his things that normally go right. So let's see what he has to say.
Well, certainly I don't think any of us got our NCAA tournament brackets right, but certainly I could say one thing. Mr. Gonzalez is not going to do what they, let's say, Washington Nationals fans been on a couple of times with this. Rick Lewis is going to say and pick the Washington Nationals. I can be pretty sure that Mr. Gonzalez is not going to pick them, but he does have a couple of comments. He also says, I have made quite an impact on the Brute. In fact, John actually gave me a voice message today speaking about how much he was excited to hear what you have to say on your bracket, which we're going to get to in a few minutes. And John likes the Atlanta Braves. Kind of the safe pick, obviously. Braves have been the class of the National League East over pretty much on and off for the most of the last, I'd say, 30 years or so, pretty much. So, safe pick there, Atlanta Braves. Can't blame them on that.
Tom, you really had to get that history lesson in for us that none of us want to hear anymore. You had to bring up the last 30 years. Come on, we don't want to hear that. Don't make me go back to what I want to say, all right? because the word is up there. It's
I understand
it's
that.
right
And you
over
were very
me. All right?
confident.
It's not
And you
leaving
were-
me.
And you were
He's
very
itching
confident.
He's
in
to
the
pull it out.
Philadelphia
He pulled it out.
and you were very confident in the Philadelphia Phillies. And listen, I mean, certainly history will certainly speak to that. So obviously, we'll have to find out. Obviously, National League East, the rest of the National League will be very, very competitive. American League as well. So we'll have to find out. But we are going to move on here to some other topics. So Rob Maraska, I'm going to give you the floor now, and anything else you want to share, say. Obviously, I have a lot of baseball going forward here to speak on Sportswire now that we're kind of in the throes of the end of the mini college basketball March Madness run. Obviously, we cover our locals here like Five Towns Sound and certainly our Golden Eagles, but when it comes to the March Madness, that's going to come to an end here next weekend. So focal point will be on you and a lot of baseball, Mets and Yankees coming forward. The way the weather's been the last week, I think I am ready for some spring, basically baseball weather. So it's been a beautiful last week. Let's hope it keeps going. And Rob Maraska, anything else you want to share, say, and the floor is yours. And please plug any social media else you have out there.
Yeah, thanks. Good show tonight, guys. Thanks. Glad to be with everybody tonight. I just want to congratulate KL LaRose one more time. I'm gonna have a bunch of contests this season. We'll put it up everywhere so that we can get more people watching. I'm gonna have some great contests coming up. So everyone just listen for that. And you can reach me on Facebook at Rob Maraska and at Twitter at @RMaraska. So
all right. Excellent,
guys. Great to be with you tonight, and I'll catch you guys next week.
Absolutely. And before you go, John Gonzalez says the teams he likes to win divisions are the Atlanta Braves, the St. Louis Cardinals. Yeah, I would have said the Cardinals most likely, looking at that Central. I mean, I think who else would you really think? I mean, and he likes the Padres. Padres obviously look like they're the team right now in the National League West. And he likes in the American League the Yankees. The White Sox, which I was kind of curious what you guys thought on the White Sox. That was a decent pick.
I'm not high on them at all.
I like the Twins in the Central this year.
Well, Twins basically did what the Mets did, hold the division for most of the season, then pretty much blow it and give it away. And we'll have to see if they kind of come back and keep the lead. What about the Indians? Obviously, will be there. And he says, let's not bring up the bracket challenge. Well, we're going to bring it up because we're all pretty much out of it now at this point. Somebody has to win it, but we'll definitely do that. But Rob, obviously, great stuff. Congratulations on Kayla there, who wins from Patton, California. Certainly a place I am not that familiar with, but I hope to be familiar with because of her win. And like the Rumble Pony shirt, obviously, we've covered Rumble Ponies in the past on Sportswire through Ernest Stubbs. So great stuff, Rob Maraska. We'll speak with you next week, and looking forward to some Mets baseball with you, buddy.
Okay, good night, guys.
All right, and that was Rob Maraska, our longest tenured analyst here, who announced the winner of his contest for the Shohei Ohtani Limited Edition 2023 card. And thank you, Rob, for tuning in. And right on cue here, the Brute Force Brad Wise, I think this was the part of the show I have to admit, and I won't lie, that I was most excited to find out about. Because obviously I was getting a lot of messages left and right about how the brackets were going, who was winning, and everybody was kind of wondering, well, what about the Brute Force? The Brute Force had been very bold in terms of where he was going to finish this year and how his bracket was going to go. And for those that are listening and watching, I mean, for who's left in this bracket for any teams, I mean, tell us who's in the lead and where we kind of go from here with our March Madness, which has been, I think, and I know I'm saying this here, probably one of the craziest NCAA tournaments I've maybe seen in I don't know how long.
Yeah, I mean, my God. I mean, literally, I should just put this on the screen because this has been like, every single minute. I mean, literally, you can't get anything right. But listen, this is actually a little bit of an interesting conversation that we're having because obviously all of us, our winners have been pushed out of the tournament. None of us have our winners correct anymore. But with that being said, record-wise, none of us are doing too shabby. But, it's a close race. So, in that point, there is still something to be said. It is a little bit of an interesting conversation. So when it comes to, and I hate to say this, when it comes to record and who's won and lost, the best record is John Gonzalez right now. All right. But he is not in first place officially because the point system goes based on when you're winning and in what round and what game. So he's not winning. The leader of the point system is actually Joey Bostrom at the moment.
Where is Joey Bostrom today? Where is this guy, Joseph
I don't know.
Bostrom?
Maybe this will wake him up right now, Joey Bostrom. So
I have a feeling he probably would be sleeping knowing him.
So, listen, Joey's in the lead, but, between him and, listen, there's one other guy that I think sneakily has a very good chance, and that is Mr. Tom Bryce. And the reason why is because if you look up at the board right now, Tom, it has the points and then the most possible points, meaning how many points you can get, and Tom is leading the pack in possible points because of the games he's picked left in the tournament. And as you guys can see down here on this side, all right, the points go up as we get further. So, you get into the Elite Eight, you get 8 points, you get a Final Four, right? 16 championships, a big one. So ultimately, out of all those scenarios, Tom Bryce actually has the best chance of winning at the moment. But who's in the lead currently? It is Joey Bostrom by points. So John's going to give me all this nonsense about, I got the most wins. Well, guess what, John? You're in second place right now, and second place does not win. So I want to make that clear. All right, but props to Joey Bostrom and Tom Bryce. You're in a great spot. With that being said, I have nothing to say about my results. I mean, my results have been garbage and embarrassment. I mean, I talk about the Knicks as an embarrassment to New York City. My bracket is an embarrassment to this show. I'll be honest. It is an embarrassment. It is horrible. I mean, I literally got almost everything wrong. I mean, it's been just devastating to watch how I can't get anything right.
But almost everybody, listen, don't feel too bad. I mean, listen, somebody could be winning this. Everybody's
I'll say, one more thing quickly is that, listen, even with my men's bracket being so bad, I was just hoping that the women's bracket would at least be decent. My women's bracket might be worse. It's worse than this. So I don't know what happened this year. It is a depressing topic. John's not really proud of himself either, but
no, and he has a comment toward that. And I'm going to ask you a follow-up, actually, to that in a second. So, I mean, listen, stay tuned. What I will say, compare this to, let's say, our NFL playoffs where we were picking all the games for the Super Bowl winner and everything else. I think this seems to be a lot more competitive. This seems to be a lot more where it's just totally topsy-turvy and just certainly just kind of everybody's bracket this year. And John says Joey's at 7-Eleven. Well, he works at 7-Eleven, so that's actually probably where he likely is because that's where he works. That's his job. He works at 7-Eleven. And John says, this has been my worst bracket ever. Let's keep this between us. Yeah, you and everybody else watching and listening. So, yeah, I mean, I'll definitely be happy to keep it between us. Just only everybody's listening and watching certainly gets a chance to. But, Brian, I want to ask you a follow-up question before I get to the rest of the guys in and kind of talk about the tournament for a few minutes before we move on to Dolan time, because I do want to get into that for a second. But, I mean, how do you explain this prolonged results here? San Diego State, Anastasia Riznia, by the way, her alma mater is in the Elite Eight, which is for the first time in a long time. You've got Florida Atlantic, Ernest Dove's team. That's in. You've got Creighton. It looks like they're on the verge. I mean, how do you explain all this? It's these prolonged amount of upsets. I mean, it's one thing if it's one win here, another there, and maybe I'll get Justin's thoughts on it. But I mean, how do you explain just all these upsets here?
It's very hard to explain. Let's put it that way. Very hard to explain. But at the same time, I mean, while we're talking about upsets, I might as well put this on. But listen. Seriously, it's been insane. But listen, what it does say also is that, those number one seeds, who obviously were very good teams, weren't necessarily powerhouse teams. And these teams that these 8, 9 seeds, 6 seeds.
I mean, look at Houston gets blown out by Miami tonight. I mean, Alabama. I mean, you look at all these different teams. Certainly Purdue we spoke about. I mean, these seedings don't mean anything anymore.
It didn't mean as much this year. The gap wasn't that wide. And I think that's what people missed the mark on. I missed the mark on, is that the gaps weren't as wide as we really thought. And some of these teams that had these great records, you mentioned FAU, for example, right? They are a very good basketball team. Did we miss
something with them? Because I know they were in the lower tier of the top 25 where they hover between 18 and 25. But did we miss something on that team? Because, I mean, John Gonzalez correctly points out Ernest Dove has been hollering about them pretty much all year. He goes to their football, basketball games. I mean, His team won 33 games and kind of nobody really spoke about them. Did we
No,
miss
because
something on
again,
them?
when you look at their their division and who they're playing, right? That's what really doesn't have you speaking about them. But when you watch them play basketball, right, and you really into it, and you see what type of players and what type of what type of dogs they have, right, on their team. I mean, they are just very tough to beat. Any team, could lose to them, and you've seen it in this tournament. I mean, they're just a really tough team. So, it's been very unpredictable, but some of these teams, again, deserve a lot more respect than what we gave them. And again, those top teams, everybody was raving about Alabama and how they're so much better than everybody else. They got 2 of everything. And they go down to San Diego State. So they weren't invincible. They were not one of these teams or powerhouse teams that maybe we're accustomed to in the past. Like when we had, the Dukes and the Kentuckys and the North Carolinas in the past that were so good and got so far and we expected it. They were just that much better.
Team, yep.
Necessarily, yeah. You could go down the list. But the teams that we had in this year's tournament just weren't that much of much better than all the rest of these teams. We just didn't notice it because we're not watching FAU play basketball enough, right? We're not even watching.
Apparently, listen, the selection committee didn't watch them because here's a team that was ranked in the top 25 most of the season, and they only seed them 9th. I mean, if I did the math, shouldn't they have been at least a 5 or a 6 based on, let's say, their national ranking? I mean, so apparently the selection committee didn't give this team much respect. I mean, just objectively speaking.
No, but listen, again, all those little things like who you play and what conference you're in, they come into play. I mean, it even happened this year. I'm going to mention him now because he said he was going to tune in tonight, Tom Bryce. And by the way, his brother goes to FAU, and they're going to be at the game tomorrow night at the Garden. That is James DeSimone. His brother,
good old James DeSimone.
His brother went to FAU, and they're going to be at the game tomorrow night. He came in from Florida to watch the game. But ultimately, James, the reason why I bring him up is because the same thing happened here on Long Island with Clark, right? With his high school, where Clark was one of the best teams in single A, and they got an 11 seed when they were better than the 6 seed. But again, the conference, the competition level, they take that into account. And they need to start really looking at what the team's about, look at their record, look at what they're doing and what type of team they have, right? And then you get the better numbers, as you mentioned, Tom, because really you're seeing it come out this year that those teams who have been slept on have proven to you that they aren't just a team that's so much worse, or because they play in a conference that's lower is so much worse. No, they can compete, and they're in the Elite Eight.
Absolutely no question about that here, and I have a ton of comments, and I want to get Justin's perspective on it in a minute. I just don't see UConn or Gonzaga to win it all. I mean, Gonzaga never wins in these spots, but I guess somebody has to win it this year. Joseph Bostrom is here. Joey is here. With Houston losing, I have no more Final Four teams left. Crazy tournament. And I want to give a big mention, actually, for a second, Brad, because it's actually going to tie to our Golden Eagles. Everything always ties to our Golden Eagles. But I'm going to explain this one. Hurricanes look good tonight. I do like Coach Jim Larinaga and Archbishop Malloy grad, and I'm going to bring this up because, as I'm sure maybe you may or not be aware of, John Matejko, Brad, who is, of course, the legendary Golden Eagles head coach, he comes under, his mentor was Jim Larinaga, and Jim Larinaga was somebody we spoke with about Coach Matejko on Sportzwire Radio, and of course, Coach Larinaga years ago cut his teeth where the first player I think he really ever had was Mario Elie, of course, the multiple-time NBA champion with the Houston Rockets, local guy as well. So it always comes back to our Golden Eagles, and Coach Matejko certainly falls under as a disciple of certainly Coach Larinaga. And I was watching Miami before we came on the air. It was bomb after bomb after bomb. I mean, Houston made them look bad. Just a team that certainly made them look like they had no business being a 1 seed. But Justin, I mean, your brackets, like all of ours, and Carlos Otoro Chavez is perfectly busted. I mean, what do you make of this NCAA tournament this year?
I think it's a product of the whole NIL. It's a product of the transfer portal. And all of that. I think, you're not getting a lot of continuity, especially with these bigger teams. The Blue Bloods just aren't the Blue Bloods anymore. Like, Kentucky had a good season, but they were I believe they were a 6 seed. Duke was a 5 seed. These teams were good, but like, they just don't have the experience, which is why I was so stunned. You know, I know they got a tough draw and they ended up losing to Gonzaga last night, but I think you had to marvel at the continuity that UCLA had, but the team ran out of gas late. But because if you think about it, for the last 3 years, we've been watching guys like Tiger Campbell and Jaime Jaquez, David Singleton. I mean, they were the one rarity of a blue blood with a lot of continuity. And I think that's what's leading to a lot of these upsets. You know, FDU did a tremendous job in that game by, making sure the ball got out of Zach Edey's hand, and he was a foot taller than basically every other.
We spoke about that in the show at length last week.
A foot taller than every other player on FDU, and I just think this era of college basketball now, these smaller schools like a Princeton or an FDU, they're going to have the continuity because these guys are going to stay there, and then they're going to be effective in the tournament at least for 1 year, and then it'll be a different batch of small schools next year, right? Because you already saw how this affected FDU, right? 10 months ago, they're hiring Tobin Anderson from St. Thomas Aquinas.
Yep.
D3 school.
A guy we spoke about, Tobin Anderson. I spoke about him. Later,
guess what? He's replacing Rick Pitino at St. John's, which, by the way, is another team we need to talk about, even though they're not one of the 68 teams in this tournament, because St. John's is going to become a major factor, especially in the Big East, and even next year in the NCAA tournament. I don't know anybody who can sit here and say that you could expect them, that you can't expect them to be at least a 6 seed next year. Because I think Pitino's going to work instant magic, and I think it allows for these upsets. I mean, and now we're going to be seeing, what was San Diego State, a 5 seed, I believe.
5, yep.
Yeah, so you're gonna get a 5 versus 6 in the South Final against Creighton. Texas is taking care of business, but they're going to end up playing Miami. Because Houston went down. I mean, think about it. It's the first time ever since the seeding began in '79. No 1 seed in the final in the Elite Eight.
It's crazy.
And a couple of comments here first. Joey Bostrom says, what woke me up was when the brute force said the Phillies will win the National League East. Boy, I guess that took a lot of waking up then. That was some maybe soul searching. When people heard that the brute force, again, I'm going to go on that still. I am so curious. The 7-line army, when somebody gets wind of when you say the Philadelphia Phillies win the National League East, I mean, there's got to be some crazy, because the 7-line army fans are like the blue and orange Islander fans. Like, that fan base is like, they're the most obviously diehard blue and orange fans around. So it's like the 7-line army to me, it's like the blue and orange army. It's almost like you cannot say a single negative word about the Mets. I mean, here on Sportswire, Brad, you can say whatever you want. You can say anything you want about me. But with the 7-line army, that's going to be a very interesting experience. We'll make sure that clip is very loud and clear for the 7-line army. And the FDU coach got the Iona job. And that's such a fascinating thing that Tobin Anderson, and we talked about it last week. Obviously, we joked about him getting the Purdue job, but the Iona job's a pretty good job. And, Brad, for us here locally, and again, I hate to bring it up, Coach Matejko was at Iona, and Coach Matejko, obviously, that was under Timmy Cluse, another guy who comes out of the Jim Larinaga tree, and Timmy Cluse had a lot of success at Iona, team that a mid-major school that has certainly got into the NCAA tournament a lot. They had a lot of success. Coach Pitino led that. I mean, I have to ask you actually quickly, Brad. I mean, what do you make of it? I mean, Iona's always been a program that you think about their school, where they are, but they've had a lot of success. They're kind of very crafty in a way, not to make this comparison for the general fan, but I've almost, up until the last 3 or 4 years where the Oakland A's have kind of just decided they're just going to, sell till they can, have no fans whatsoever. But the Iona Gales men's basketball program in a lot of ways was very similar to kind of how the Oakland A's kind of ran their baseball team for a long time. I mean, talk about Tobin Anderson coming to Iona. And what do you think about that move?
Yeah, I'll be honest with you. I was kind of surprised by that move. I wasn't really thinking. Again, we spoke about how I kind of felt about Tobin Anderson in a whole last week. And again, listen, I'm never going to be the one to hate on a coach that goes from a Division III school to a Division I school, then gets to the tournament, and all of a sudden gets this big job. I'm not. Listen, I'm a coach that wants to get places also. So I'm never going to.
I asked you if you wanted to interview for a job. You said no.
Not right now, but we'll see what happens in the future. But listen, listen, I'm not going to go and go crazy about it, but I really questioned the move. I really thought Iona could have done a little bit better. I know, this last year he did a good job. He got the guys to the tournament, but it's not really a big sample size, Tom. Like, to be able to take him and put him on Iona on their staff, and you just mentioned Timmy Kluse and Rick Pitino. Those are big time, coaches.
Timmy Kluse was 5 straight trips to the NCAA tournament. I think.
I know they're just going on this success that they had this past season and recency bias here, but I thought it was a little questionable decision by Iona. I'm not really sure about it, but again, they could prove me wrong. Right now, I'm kind of iffy on that, and if it was really the right move for, again, program you mentioned, Tom, it's been very successful. They've had some really good coaching over the last few years, so they brought some good players out, so they are a good program. And I really want to touch upon what Justin said about St. John's. This is a game changer. Even talking to my good friend Joe Tartamella, we do see that this is going to be a big game changer, not only for the program but for the school. We're talking about facilities and what's going to happen with him on campus and how it's going to bring more, attention to St. John's again. I mean, we're not even talking about the players that he's going to bring in, which we know, he's a great recruiter, so he's going to do that as well. So it is a big time move for St. John's. It will put them in to the back to the stratosphere of on top of the Big East, but that Big East is very competitive. As we know, we hear Xavier, we hear Creighton, we hear Providence. I know Georgetown stinks, but Eddie Cooley, hopefully will do a better job there. You go down the list of teams. Villanova, UConn,
Seton Hall. I have to throw Seton Hall in there. We'll still be back with Shaheen Holloway. You have to throw them in there.
Right. So all these schools, it's going to be tough, but you can't rule out St. John's and Rick Pitino and what he's going to do. They are going to be right there. They are going to be towards the top. And they are going to bring that name back to fruition, where we don't have to St. John's. They're all right.
It's a big deal. This is a big deal. I mean, obviously, look. I mean, we've had different coaches at St. John's. I mean, Steve Lavin won a national championship, but he didn't have the success the prior years at UCLA. I know he was a part of that staff that won a national title and had some success. It did okay at St. John's, but I mean,
the biggest thing is. Brad, you can relate because you're around my age. Tom, you're not far off from my age. We grew up in an era where New York City basketball really, college-wise, nothing special, right?
No,
so now these top and listen, that hasn't meant there's not top tier talent coming out of New York City in terms of high school.
Oh, yeah.
They're not going, but they're not staying here.
I mean, just look at Kansas State's point guard. I mean, look at that.
Exactly. From New York City. I can promise you right now, Pitino's not letting that out of New York City.
Well, he's Rick Pitino, but that's my point. Rick Pitino, right? And I know Chris Mullin was a Hall of Famer, but he wasn't a coach or a recruiter. Rick Pitino, I mean, this is the standard bearer. This is a guy that's won national championships. This is a guy, when he talks, you listen, you move forward. I mean, Chris Mullin was like the Patrick Ewing hiring. It was a sentimental alma mater. I mean, Mullin was a little better than that, but I hasn't been coached before. Yeah. Right? No, they were both very good as players. Obviously, both Hall of Famers, right? Hall of Fame basketball players. But Pitino brings instant credibility. You see the name Rick Pitino, you are immediately drawn to it. And that's what's going to happen to St. John's. And that's what's going to change about New York City basketball. He's even said, I'd like to play more. For my brand of basketball, we need to play more games at the Garden because Carnesecca Arena is just not big enough. Well, it's Patino, so I'm sure that's
By
part
the
of
way,
the
Tom,
deal.
let me just make one point because we know John
Okay.
Gonzalez is tuning in.
I have some comments toward this.
Let's make clear why New York City basketball has been so depressing for all these years, especially as Justin said, through our lifetime. All right, you know who's the number one person who should be blamed for that?
Oh no.
We're gonna get to that in a minute. I'm gonna get to that.
James
Wait a minute.
Dolan.
How is Dolan? Wait.
That's John Gonzalez's buddy. It's his fault.
Well, I'll get to that in a minute. I'm trying to follow this up.
Wait. Explain. How is Dolan? Dolan is the problem for professional basketball, but not.
Oh, but it stems down. It stems down. All right. Our team stinks, and it's an embarrassment. Ain't nobody
like I
want to
said,
be.
St. John's really, other than a couple of years with Steve Lavin, really hasn't been any good in 30 years, 25 years, right? Mike Jarvis had a couple. I remember Mike Jarvis had a couple years, right? Was it Mike Jarvis had a couple years deep in the NCAA tournament? That's like ages ago. So, I mean, St. John's has won 1-2 tournament games in like a quarter century. So yeah, it's on par with the Knicks. I mean, I'll give you that. I don't know. I'm with Chris. I don't know if I have anything to do with Dolan or not, but
St. John's is just not a powerhouse like these other big colleges are.
It's not.
It's been so long that you got to go back to the late 80s for St. John's.
Yeah, pretty much. 2 years with Mike Jarvis. I remember it was 2 years. I think they had, what was it? Was it Felipe Lopez? There was the ESPN documentary. Was he a part of that? Who was the other guy I'm trying to think that they had? It was like 2 years. We're talking about 1-2 years with Mike Jarvis. That's ages ago. If you watch the ESPN 30 for 30 documentary, but that's, again, I mean, St. John's, I think the problem with St. John's, and I hate to say it, almost like Brad, when we speak about Division III locally, St. John's is not a dorm school. It's not equipped to be like UNC or Duke or UCLA or Arizona. It's like this campus in the middle of the far-flung part of Queens with different campuses. I mean, that would be my explanation.
St. John's is a great college to go to.
I applied for it years ago. I mean, I know it very well, and I got accepted. I didn't know.
Yep. You can't, like you said, you can't compare it to Duke or North Carolina or go down to Florida, any of the Florida. You know, it's hard. Location.
Yeah, no, the location's never been.
Who's on national TV the most? That's another thing. If you're a player, Brett, you're a player. Where do you want to go? You want to go where you're going to be noticed. Not just coached, but also noticed. I'm not saying, Pitino's a great coach, Hall of Fame coach, all of that. But if you could go to Duke or North Carolina, that's much bigger than going to St. John's.
Oh, yeah.
So compare it. Like, what do you want, a great coach or a pretty good coach and an unbelievable college and more attention?
Yeah, well, obviously we want more attention and obviously the great college. But listen, with that all being said, with Rick Pitino in the building, this now becomes, especially for New Yorkers, kids, like I said, kids that want to play here and want to, play at the Garden and that, Rick Pitino being the coach of the team makes players now want to stay and be with St. John's and kind of sacrifice a little bit of that, big college experience.
And that's a part of college athletics because obviously this is something I'm very familiar with, and Brad as well. He played, and I've covered this topic for a long time. And if you have a coach that wants players to stay and come here, you will get the players. And I think St. John's hasn't had that. And Joey Bostrom says St. John's won the Big East tournament in 2000, won the NIT in 2006. Well, I'm going to fact check you slightly because the crack staff has told me the last time that St. John's went deep in the NCAA tournament, you have to go back to, I was correct, 1999 with Mike Jarvis. So we're talking, nobody remembers that. You're talking 1999, they go to a regional final, 20.
Could that have possibly been the team that Ron Artest was on?
I mean, the crack staff will certainly let us know in a second. Certainly, the crack staff will tell us if that was a Ron Artest team. Yes, it was. He was on that team. Eric Buckley was on that team. Yes, Tyrone Grant. Yeah, you are correct. Yep. LeVar Postel. Yes, that was 1999. That was the last time that they were worth anything. So they had 3 straight trips to the NCAA tournament with Jarvis.
I got to say, it sounds like the New York Knicks to me.
I mean, from that standpoint, correct. Also, Joey, Let's see. Joey says, I still can't believe no number 1 seeds left. This weekend is going to be interesting. Nothing would surprise me anymore. Yeah, that's fair. John Gonzalez says, I predict the Brute Force will get the Herrick's job. I mean, if you want that job, you could get that job, by the way. You don't have to apply for that. They'll give you the job. Do you want that job?
Not right now, but you're not wrong. I probably could get the job.
Somebody might want that. And Joey Bosham says St. John's lost to Maryland in 1999. Was that Maryland with Steve Francis? If I'm not mistaken, correct me if I'm wrong. Was that Maryland with Steve Francis before he went to the Houston Rockets? That would make sense. And John Gonzalez also, which I'm going to slightly fact check you, John. I don't do it too often. Iona was good when they had Valvano. They've been good since then. Obviously, Coach Cluse, who we know very well, took them 4 straight trips to the NCAA tournament. Jeff Rulin, who played in the NBA for a little while, I think with the Washington Bullets, they won a game 1 year. They won 20 games a bunch of times. So Iona's had success. They've actually been, like I said, to me, very similar to the Oakland A's of Major League Baseball. They haven't done it with maybe the most well-known players, but they've had some great coaches. Obviously, Jeff Rulin won a bunch of games. Timmy Cluse, we know here locally. Obviously, we see what Patino's done in a short time. So Iona's had some success, and I think the Tobin Anderson one is still a good hire.
Yes, that was a Steve Francis. That was a Steve Francis Maryland team, by the way.
I thought that was the case. I thought because I remember
and Juan Dixon was a freshman on that Maryland team. Juan Dixon was a key part of the Maryland 02 championship team.
Yes, Juan Dixon. That was a name. I remember Juan Dixon very well. And Juan Dixon certainly didn't have the career he had in the pros that he had in college. That's what I certainly remember of Juan Dixon. That's a name. Wow. I haven't heard a Juan Dixon reference in a long time, Brad. That's a long, long time. And Casey Jack Bradley says here, hello, gents. I think you're looking for some wrestling coverage, my friend. Unfortunately, that's going to be Sunday night when we have certainly more coverage here with Catalyst and the new Messiah, Nicholas Crenson. Also, John says, you're right. Rulin was there and played in coach. Yeah, no, Rulin, they won a game, if I'm not mistaken, the NCAA tournament, one of those years in the 2000s, and they did have success. The Iona's had good success. They've been a good program. They've definitely been a very scrappy program. So I definitely think Iona has got the coach they want for years to come. And Joey says, yep, Steve Francis, you're right. So I got all the college ideas. I have no idea who's going to win the whole thing. We'll talk about it, I'm sure, next week for kind of giggles, I'm sure. But you have it up on the screen here before we get to closing thoughts, the Brute Force. And, you know, last week I was getting ready to tell you New York stand up. Now I'm getting ready to tell you New York sit down. And will New York be able to avoid a play-in right now? But if you saw the Daily News this morning, certainly it was what was the line? They said it was a horrible night for the Nets and Knicks, and they put it kindly on the New York Daily News, the bottom, if anybody saw it today and this morning. Yeah. But are you now sitting down when it comes to the New York Knicks and the latest edition for Dolan time?
Yeah, I'm sitting. Yeah.
What?
I am certainly sitting, and like I said, this continues the theme of the night of where I'm going to stop with today with my confidence banter, because last week again I said confidence that the Knicks were going to get the 5 seed and that Brooklyn wasn't going to catch up to them. Miami was right, and Justin said, listen, not so fast, Brad. Brooklyn might get to them, and of course, what happens? The New York Knicks have lost 4 straight games. That's what's happened. All right, and listen, I got. Yeah, I mean, so listen.
Instead of Brad, instead of you sitting down, you should probably be restraining Julius Randle from going nuts.
Oh, well, hold on. You're stealing my fire, Justin. You're stealing my fire. Hold on. I was about to say that I have a public statement that I need to make right now, and I have to say it and put somebody on Front Street, and that's the man. I'm going to do it right now. All right, Julius Randle, shut your mouth. Shut it.
Wow.
Stop your nonsense. Stop your nonsense. Stop crying. Stop being a bad leader. Stop yelling at the refs. Stop getting technical fouls. You are an embarrassment to our team right now. Not by your play, by your actions. What are you doing? This guy, Julius Randle, right now. I mean, he at halftime, at a random time at halftime, at the end of, he runs into somebody, right? He wants the foul. His teammates are doing the right thing by trying to restrict him away from the officials, right? And he goes running at the official, gets a technical foul, quickly tries to get him away, and he's getting in his teammate's quickly face, yelling at him to stop touching him. you know what? Stop going near the referee. That's what he's trying to tell you, because you're going to be suspended soon on this in this pace, right? On top of that, you are also a bad example to the team. And this is the problem that I'm having, Tom Bryce, and you know where I'm going with this. We are now under double-digit games left in the regular season. You know what's coming Tom Bryce? The playoffs.
Yes.
And you know what Julius Randle does in the playoffs?
Nothing.
He chokes. He crashes. He stumbles. He falls flat on his face. And right now, he is doing exactly that. And it's not from his play. Once again, I want to make it clear. His play has still been good. It's been fine. Okay, but that's not what it's going to take to win a playoff series. Yeah, he's going to have to play well, but is he going to do this nonsense in a playoff series? He's worried more about the ref than the next possession. He's worried more about the ref than playing defense. He's more worried about the ref than passing and making the right pass on offense. He is absolutely, I'm going to call him a baby. He's acting like a baby. He's acting like I don't want to say the other words I want to mention on our airwaves. All right, he is a disaster right now. He is embarrassing New York City. He is embarrassing. He looks like James Dolan the way he's acting like a clown. All right, ultimately, he needs to get himself into shape. And when it comes to acting the right way, and I also blame this partially on Tom Thibodeau. Where is there any discipline, any action, and anything to stop this? Because it keeps getting worse. His behavior patterns are getting worse. It's not only towards the officials because he argues every damn call, but it's also now his teammates. All right, and you got Mitchell Robinson, as again Justin accurately mentioned last week, right? Where he now is mad about his role. He's mad about how the team is going, right? And you think a good leader would kind of calm that down? No. Julius Randle's worried about yelling at the ref every single possession instead of worrying about that. And guess what? When it comes to team in the playoff, if you look like this where you're divided because Julius Randle's arguing with the ref, so now teammates can't talk to him as much because they're worried they're going to push, he pushes them and then he's going to yell back at them, right? You got Robinson who doesn't like his role. This is a formula for disaster right now. Even when the Knicks do make the playoffs, whether it's a play-in, whether it's a 6-5, okay, this is a disaster waiting to happen. Jalen Brunson is still not 100% healthy at the moment, okay? We still need him. But with that being said, you can just see the kind of little crumblings of the Knicks right now, and you kind of see Miami starting to pick it up, right? I know Brooklyn's struggling as well, okay? But the New York Knicks are crashing in front of our eyes, and it's just another typical moment in Dolan time history in the Sports Report where I have 2 weeks of happiness and then I go back to this because we all know what's about to happen. They're going to crumble, they're going to crash, and ultimately they're probably going to end up losing to the team that they should have made the trade for with Donovan Mitchell. They're probably going to end up losing to him because they didn't do their job. And by the way, the New York Knicks organization opened their damn big mouths and didn't get the job done. Instead of, getting the job done, they opened their mouths and they really didn't open their mouths enough, which is part of the problem. So there's just a bunch of problems with the Knicks. I am sick. I am angry. I am pissed off. And I've seen enough of Julius action.
The Brute Force Brad Wise, you even got a wrestler that's tuned in here, Casey Jarrett Bradley, a young up-and-coming wrestler who says, this is getting heated. If a wrestler is saying that you're getting heated, you're heated tonight when it comes to the New York Knicks. I have to say,
great promo right here. He just cut a good promo.
Well, he did say. I was hearing you, Brad. Certainly you must be tuned in, but
Well, listen, and Justin will validate me right now. Yep. It's true. It's ridiculous.
100% true. And I'm telling you right now, the refs are going to be calling less fouls in the postseason.
Yes.
And what's going to happen? Julius Randle's going to complain to the refs. He's going to get a technical foul. I could see it right now. The Cavaliers beat the Knicks 103-102, and somewhere in there was a Julius Randle technical that Mitchell makes a free throw, and that's the difference in the game because he can't stop running his damn mouth. It's getting old. It really is. Like, at some point, Julius Randle has to grow up at some point because he is certainly turned into the cancer of the New York Knicks. And like Brad said, we're not knocking his play. He's been tremendous this year.
24-plus points a game, 10 rebounds.
He's had a really good season. But when he gets in these mental spaces where he's just going after the ref every single play, it's a problem. You know, we've seen him have a meltdown on the sidelines a few weeks ago. You know, we've seen these occurrences. It's not a one-off. This is like 6, 7, 8 different times over the last couple of years.
I was going to say that was about my actual line.
At some point, the Knicks have to cut the bait. You know, and you're right. Where is Tom Thibodeau? You know what? His biggest problem was not saying something when it first happened a couple of years ago, because he's let it go on and on and on, and he's just being run over.
Oh, I got 2 more points for you, Tom, before you take it back. All right. Number one, what have I said all along about Julius Randle? Even though I've joked about it recently, trade the man. Trade him.
said that for about 2 years.
Trade him. And his value's at an all-time high.
Into next season with him on the roster. They cannot go into next season with him on the roster.
It's enough. It's enough. It really is enough. And I've said it. I've tried to remain confident. And just when I go back to being confident, it goes back to this. The second thing I want to say is this, and I've said this in the past about Julius Randle when it comes to him. All right, I had a 3rd grade practice today with my 3rd graders. And a 3rd grader, I actually asked who his favorite player is. And he told me it was Julius Randle. Okay, and just think about a kid whose favorite player is Julius Randle. He's watching him on TV, complaining to the ref every other possession. What do you think these kids are going to start doing? They're going to follow who their favorite players are, which are Julius. And it's ridiculous. Every time every other possession, you see Randle with the ref and talking, right, going over. I mean, clearly just standing right next to him. He can't even have a conversation from a distance anymore. He's got to walk over and talk right next to him. It is ridiculous. I feel bad for these kids that like Julius Randle, that think that he's an example for them. He is a horrible example. I've said it in the past, and it's just getting worse. And as soon as this crumbles, like Justin said, I've said it in the past, and I'm going to say it again. He better not be a New York Knick, because he is a class example right now, literally in the same class as James Dolan when it comes to the class list.
And think about this. So obviously in the interim, it's not going to matter because we're past the trade deadline. Can't do anything right now, right? You have to wait till after the season. But Julius Randle is still playing a level of basketball that is very high. And he at this point, you know, when we were talking about last year, trade Julius Randle, he was not playing this way. And so his value was at an all-time low. Despite the antics, he's going to have good value because of how he's playing. And the Knicks will actually be able to recuperate some assets for Julius Randle, and they have to. Again, he cannot, opening night 2023-2024 season, he cannot be on the Knicks roster.
All right, well, I got a ton of comments
He's never going to be moving towards a championship because he's going to be the one thing that holds them back.
Well, right now for the New York Knicks, they're just trying to hang on here and avoid the pllaying right now. But the Nets are certainly doing them.
They will. The Nets aren't playing good enough, and
the Nets, unfortunately,
I waste my breath on them.
Yeah,
because they suck. But now, whether they hold off Miami, that's a different story because they do have one more meeting with Miami.
Yeah, and Miami's a game and a half. I think Miami's a game and a half behind them.
So, I believe, Justin, they're playing each other tomorrow. Is that right? Miami.
I know it's in the very, very near future. So you might be tomorrow. Could be right.
I got Wednesday on the schedule.
Okay.
I knew it was in the next couple of days.
Oh, Wednesday. Hold on. Wednesday, I think is the Knicks are playing Miami.
Yes.
Yeah, Knicks are playing Miami. Yeah.
I'm saying I think Brooklyn is playing Miami tomorrow. I believe. Brooklyn.
Yes, you are correct. In Miami, 8 o'clock. Correct.
Such a flatliner lately.
Correct. In fact,
they'll be lucky to be in the play.
Brooklyn is in Miami, and then Sunday, 6 p.m., which is also my brother Sean's birthday, a Brooklyn Nets fan, actually, Sean Bryce, who I think was at the last Brooklyn Nets game. He was actually there. Unfortunately,
what a disaster.
Unfortunately for him, he was at the game. I hope he has a happy birthday. I certainly wish he has a great birthday. I doubt he'll be at the game in Orlando, but I hope he's at another game coming up. We actually went to a playoff game together, 2019. It was a Game 4, 76ers and Nets. The Nets wound up losing. It was a Saturday afternoon game, and that was kind of a depressing ride back to Staten Island. So hopefully we don't have another depressing ride again here. But I got some comments here. Casey Jack Rowley has a funny one to try to break the ice. The last time I played baseball, I launched the bat instead of the ball. LOL. Yeah, okay, that was a funny one. John Gonzalez says, after that rant, You have now been banned from any halftime activities from MSG. Have you been notified by anybody that you've been banned?
No, I have not been notified. So your sources are incorrect.
Okay.
Yeah,
Well,
but Brad, you better be
yet.
careful. This show goes viral, and Dolan's gonna
he's in
find this,
trouble.
and you're
Listen,
not gonna be able
I've
to get
already
into
gotten
the garden.
myself into plenty of trouble. All right, listen. I might be in trouble with some Mets fans that are not going to logically understand me with what I said today. All
that
right,
was
because
great.
everyone on this show knows that I'm not actually picking the Phillies, but I want it to be where I'm picking them so that
Well, I
the
know
Mets
why
win.
you did it, but I don't think the 7-line army, because their
That's what I'm
logic
saying. They're not going to understand me, and that's why listen. When it comes to this too, they ain't going to understand me either.
See the
Wow.
7-line army
He's
and
just
the blue and
insulting
orange.
everybody. Brad's going to be on an island by himself.
Well, Casey Jack Bradley has some comments toward that, but the 7-line army and the blue and orange army are the same way. You have to say we're going 162-0, 82-0. I mean,
That's true. That's true.
I've tried that before.
I can't do that, but that's why I'm here and I'm not there. But Casey Jack Bradley says that you should be a wrestler after cutting the promos that you did. He says he's enjoying this and he's going to come on more often to hear you cut promos on more players. So it looks like you have earned a fan who's up here at 4 o'clock in the morning, young wrestler training, and has heard these promos. And who knows who he tells? He might tell one of his obviously bosses over at GT Ministries, Colory Championship Wrestling, I'm sure, James Barris and Gareth Angel, I'm sure those individuals would feast at having you there in their roster. So, but John Gonzalez also wants to point out that he was their favorite sports personality to the third graders. If that's something you can quantitate, I'll go with it. But obviously, we've run the gauntlet here tonight on Sportswire Radio. What I've learned tonight is that the Brute Force is in a foul mood. And maybe you have a point, Brad. In the 3 years on the air, I think you've only had like 4 good weeks with Dolan time, 4 out of like 100. So I mean, that ratio ain't too very good. So I'll give you that much.
Stretch.
You know what makes me happy?
What?
The Mavericks keep losing.
That's
wonderful.
The Dallas Mavericks certainly are probably the biggest story.
And because 7 through 12 is so close, the Mavericks fell to 11th tonight with their loss.
Well, the Dallas Mavericks at one point, what have they lost? 15 of like 16 or something like that? 15 to 17? It's just been one of the most pitiful stretches. I mean, you remember of a team that was third at one point, right?
And they've lost a lot of games since Kyrie Irving got there.
Well, that's a coincidence. I mean, no coincidence there, right? Certainly, that's kind of why you see the Western Conference. But what a logjam. Yeah, no, definitely a big logjam from, I guess you want to say 4th to 12th, really. It's 3.5 games from 9 teams, 3.5 games. Reminds me of...
Think about it. Think about it. Because the Lakers are playing pretty well lately. If the Lakers go on a winning streak, they might end up in 6th. And all this talk about them missing the postseason, next thing you know, they're in the playoffs regularly. And you don't want to face them, right? Because LeBron comes back, AD. I mean, maybe a team. They're playing good basketball right now, especially with D'Angelo Russell. Jared Vanderbilt's been tremendous for them as well.
How about
Austin Reeves is absolutely on fire. He has stepped up in LeBron's absence. And Anthony Davis as well. I mean, you can't forget about Anthony Davis. He's stayed healthy over the second half of the season, and the Lakers all of a sudden have this continuity where they're a pretty good basketball team, and so far so good. They're winning tonight, but they're all of a sudden a winning streak away from moving into 6th. That Western Conference, New Orleans has played a lot better of late. You've got Minnesota. Golden State's won a couple. They're all just bunched up. It almost reminds me of kind of this past year's wild card situation where all these teams were just bunched up and you don't really know who's going to end up here. And John Gonzalez has a funny one here. He says, Rob Morosky will be giving away a Julius Randle card next week. I guess that would be, instead of Pops, that would be a Piani, because Piani actually makes the NBA cards. Topps used to make them, but it's been a while since Piani.
Very popular, though, that competition, for a Randle card.
I don't know how many people would actually bring in.
You know who would go into that thing? John Gonzalez. He would want that card. So
no, I got a better one. I got a better one for you. You know who would want this card? Because I know he's definitely not tuned in at this point. Because I know he's probably somewhere a lot more important. Anthony Finkel would love a Julius Randle card because he was complaining about him the last time the second to last time I saw him 2 months ago at Duffy's, a little over 2 months ago, and he was complaining about Julius Julius Randle. So he'd be the perfect guy to get that Julius Randle card to. So, yeah, listen, don't put it past Rob Maraska. Rob Maraska could have that Julius Randle card, could be getting ready for that next contest coming up. Who knows, maybe next week here. So certainly all great stuff in a rather eventful Sportswire Radio. I want to give one more update before we get to closing thoughts here. I want to give an update for those that actually want to see it. The March Madness scores right now. Texas is up 17 over Xavier with 3:49 left. We've got here also, once again, San Diego State had defeated Alabama 71-64. Miami, bombs away from Coach Larinaga, 89-75 over number 1 seeded Houston. And Creighton finds a way 86-75 over Princeton. So congratulations to those winners. Obviously, we'll see how the rest of the tournament shakes up here coming up. We'll also see today coming up here now that's officially midnight here. Florida Atlantic and Kansas State. Boy, if you would have had Florida Atlantic and Kansas State in your final for your regional here, I would have said you certainly know something that no one else does. 6:09 tip-off, and John Gonzalez pointed out UConn Gonzaga, 8:49 p.m. And then we'll see also Sunday, Creighton and San Diego State. Anastasia Risnia, her alma mater. Obviously, she was a classmate of the legendary Marshall Faulk. And we'll see Miami. Again, nobody saw these teams coming. So what this tells you is that this year, nobody knew anything. And John Gonzalez says, yeah, Fink deserves that card. He sure does. He would definitely want that card. Rob Maraska, I can give you his address, or even better, Rob Maraska, get that contest for Julius Randle for the Piani. I know where Anthony Finkel lives in Brooklyn. I'll actually personally deliver it to him. So I could actually make that happen. But be that as it may, let's get to closing thoughts here. Another rather eventful Sportswire Radio show. Once again, we literally ran the gauntlet tonight. We spoke about wrestling, NHL, NBA, MLB, March Madness, you name it. We spoke about it. We didn't even talk about Aaron Rodgers because he was pushed to the side for a couple days here. So let's get to closing thoughts. I'm going to go first with you, Chris Bezea. Obviously enjoying the Liftoff Jets show this week. We've played it on the rotation for the past couple days. Play it throughout the weekend as I'm live tomorrow one more time. Also talking Rivals. And anything else you want to plug, share, or say, I want to thank you. And floor is yours and fire away.
Thank you, Tom, as always, for everything. Guys, great show as always. Yeah, we're going to be waiting on the Aaron Rodgers, trade that finally happen, whenever that happens. Hopefully this weekend, because it's the owners' meeting, and you would think the owners are getting together, and hopefully something happens. So
Chris, there's one problem.
Uh-oh.
The Packers don't have an owner.
Right.
Because everybody owns it.
Somebody's going to be
Yeah,
there,
they have all
right?
the shareholders.
So, somebody will be there.
I'm sure Mark Murphy will be there.
Yeah. I think if it doesn't happen this weekend, it's got to happen soon, because the draft is coming up in a few weeks. So, and it's going to sneak up on us real quick. So it's going to happen eventually. I can't see it not happening. So we'll be probably talking about that this week again, and whatever else moves the Jets make. And with the Talking Rivals side, opening day is finally this week. It's finally here. So pretty excited about that. We'll be previewing that opening day and all that. And, kind of excited about baseball starting. So we could forget about all the Aaron Rodgers talk for a while. We could get into baseball a little bit more. So you could hit us up at Talking Rivals on Twitter. You could hit us up on Liftoff Jets at Liftoff Jets. Also Talking Rivals, talkingrivals.com. You can hit myself up at CP7NY on Twitter as well.
Absolutely. And again, Aaron Rodgers, this saga, we said it last week.
Stupid.
I don't know when it's ever going to end. To me, it reminds me of, let's say, again, I compared it to Angelina Jolie, Brad Pitt. I compared it to Bennifer. How many incarnations? It's just, to me, it can go fill them in, and it's all the same to me. But obviously, I look forward to
Brute Force and Dolan, too.
Yeah, I tell you what, that was my next
It's
one.
one of those things.
Throw out there. That was the next one.
You're right.
Brute Force in the 7-line army. That would be the next one I would throw out there. I'm so
No, we're cool, Tom. We're cool.
All right, we'll
He's
find
going to
out
be
next
the only
week.
one with like a blue shirt or a red shirt or something.
No, I ain't doing that. That's asking for it, Chris. That's asking for it.
See, I can't listen. Before I get to Justin, I could never do it. And again, the reason I bring up the blue and orange army so much because I was an Islanders season ticket holder for like 4 years, the time in Brooklyn. I never could do the whole face paint and the whole drum thing. And I just couldn't do it. I mean, but some people can, and God bless them, and that's why they are fans. And fans certainly make the sports entertainment situation and the environment as what it is. And Justin Gianelli, I turn it over to you. I've enjoyed the baseball banter show this week. I got a chance to hear it a couple times before I went live on the air. Yes, today. And I want to give you the floor. Anything else you want to plug, share, say? And the floor is yours. And fire away, my friend.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Tom. Yep, opening day is on Thursday, and like we talked about before, the preview show will be recorded on Sunday. So hopefully by the end of Sunday night or into Monday, that I could get that to you. And I happened to catch the list. The list of opening day starters have been filtered out. So I wanted to go through some notables here. In the Giants and Yankees, Garrett Cole, Logan Webb. Logan Webb gets a start for San Francisco. Marcus Stroman gets the opening day start for the Cubs against Corbin Burns. Texas is playing Philly to open the season, and you're going to see Aaron Nola up against Jacob deGrom making his Ranger debut. Obviously, the Mets and the Marlins, that's going to be a big-time battle because you got Sandy Alcantara, the reigning Cy Young Award winner, going up against Max Scherzer. You get Julio Urias going for the Dodgers against Zach Gallen for the D-backs. A good matchup with the Mariners and Guardians. Luis Castillo versus Shane Bieber.
That's a great matchup.
Yeah, there's some really high end starters. Some teams a little bit lacking, like Mitch Keller and Hunter Green. That's not the greatest of matchups, but that's Cincinnati versus Pittsburgh. But I mean, look, baseball's around the corner, and here we go for the long marathon, 162 game season. It's really going to be a lot of fun. Second, since I won't be here next Friday, I will be at a wedding next Friday.
Oh, congratulations!
My girlfriend's sister is getting married next Friday.
Oh, very nice.
So I wanted to touch on, since I would have liked to have definitively said it tonight, but the Devils decided to not win. But by the time we speak next, the Devils will obviously have clinched the postseason spot. And I just want to say something for Devils fans, especially if you're my age and you were able to be at least old enough to appreciate some of the success in the early 2000s, watch the team win a couple of Stanley Cups. You've watched them go to the highest of highs and to the lowest of lows. And there's been plenty of lows over the past decade for sure for the New Jersey Devils. But this playoff berth doesn't feel like 2018. This doesn't feel like the one-year mirage. This feels like a true beginning of a new era. With Nico Hischier and Jack Hughes, who scored 2 goals tonight, Jesper Bratt. You bring in Timo Meier, who you hopefully have for the long term as well. This really is hopefully the beginning of a new era of Devils hockey, and to be back in the postseason is it's really good, and I don't want to sound too soft here, but it makes me emotional here because I've witnessed a lot of the bad. We had to be really bad to get 2 number 1 overall picks to turn into Nico Hischier and Jack Hughes, right? We had to have some really high picks to acquire a guy like Dawson Mercer. Actually, he was more of a mid-first round pick, and Alexander Holtz is still in the minor leagues. Luke Hughes, who's going to be up at the end of the season once Michigan's college season's over, right? So you endure all the bad as a fan, and Tom Fitzgerald, the GM, has finally rewarded us with a team that we can be proud of, and I am very proud of this team and the way they've turned it around. So you can follow me on Twitter at JGNelly12 and the Baseball Banter page at BBallBanterSM.
And you should be proud of the New Jersey Devils. Obviously, it's the franchise, as you pointed out, all throughout the 1990s and the first half, I guess, of the 2000s really was a premier franchise. I mean, they won several Stanley Cups, were in another Stanley Cup final, and they were always a team that you could just count at them at the top of the Eastern Conference. And then they kind of got away from that after 2012. Had the one Cinderella postseason team. Other than that, it's been pretty much they've been mired in kind of at the bottom of the Eastern Conference and certainly the Metropolitan Division.
It was a lot of bad contracts. It was really a miracle end to Brodor's career, if you will, with that 2012 team. He kind of had that like one last moment.
Yep.
Because they had missed the playoffs the year before. The year before that was the last year of their, like, I think it was like 14 or 15 straight playoff appearances. And they were kind of mired in a lot of bad contracts. You had the Ilya Kovalchuk retirement.
Oh, that was a disaster of a contract.
Left on the hook for a lot of money. Parisi leaves to go to Minnesota. So a lot of it just went spiraling downward. And unfortunately, Lou Lamoriello just couldn't. He struggled at the end with his drafting. And it really took both Ray Shero and now Tom Fitzgerald to kind of build that back up.
But that was a long. I mean, it's been.
And the Devils finally built up enough equity that they are finally reaping the rewards.
And listen, Devils fans should certainly enjoy it because it's been a long time since the Devils have been where they are in the standings right now. It's really more than a decade. So congratulations to the Devils fan. Whenever that time comes, I'm sure it'll come. Whether it's tomorrow.
Let's just go beat Ottawa tomorrow. I know the Rangers play the Panthers, and if the Rangers beat the Panthers, the Devils are in. Let's just go beat the Senators tomorrow.
Well, as I said before I get to the Brew Force, first time in a long time, I think you'll see 3 local teams in the postseason: the Rangers, the Devils, and the Islanders. I mean,
if you look at the way the standings are set up, it looks like the Devils are guaranteed to get one of the New York teams.
I think now.
I have a feeling the Islanders are going to win that top wild card spot, which means they're going to play the winner of the Metro. There's every chance, and there's still, even despite the loss tonight, there's still the chance that the Devils win the Metro. But if they don't, they're playing the Rangers, which is going to be an epic first round series.
I kind of
think about 10 years off my life.
And listen, Devils Islanders, we spoke about it last week on the show. 1988 was the last time those two teams played in the postseason. So that's kind of a kind of interesting footnote there. Will it happen? I don't know, but I didn't realize it was that long. I kind of thought it was, but we'll have to see. Obviously, we'll have more coverage here on Sportswire with the NHL and more with, obviously, you, certainly Randy, Dylan, Chris. You guys know your stuff on the NHL. But, we certainly didn't save the best for last, but as I always say, we saved the biggest for last here. In the Brew Force, I was disappointed because obviously this past Tuesday, we were supposed to be together with our very good friend, Mr. Jason Gordieso, but unfortunately, Coach had some commitments, obviously, with the Malloy men's basketball team that certainly we could understand. Obviously, spring workouts and everything else that goes on, certainly cannot blame him for that. But I know we're definitely going to be back for sure the next 2 Tuesdays. Forget about, the NFL draft. Forget about the XFL's return, opening day, your trip to Miami. Hopefully you stay alive. Certainly WrestleMania, because we're going to be speaking with not only Money Matt Hurt, but another former Golden Eagle, a recent guest, and you might want to fill us in a little bit about that. So a lot to talk about here in your closing thoughts. Certainly, you definitely know the drill here at this point. So be my guest to say whatever you want and fire away.
Yeah, Tom, thank you for another great week of the show. Thank you, Justin, Chris, Rob Maraska, Randy Dillon, who was on earlier, for doing a great job as well. So I always want to give a shout out to everybody who's on the show. Of course, you can follow me on social media at bweiss20 on Instagram and at Coach Brad Weiss on Instagram. You can find me on Twitter at BradWeiss20, Facebook searching Bradley Weiss, and TikTok at bweiss20. So now listen carefully. All right, I'm going to start by making a few statements here. All right, number one. All right, as Tom has mentioned, I am going to Miami on Wednesday. I will be there on Wednesday. I'll be at the game on Thursday, opening day. As Justin mentioned, Max Scherzer against Sandy Alcantara, which will be a great matchup. And I will be wearing Mets colors. I will not be wearing red. I'll be wearing any other color. I will be wearing Mets colors. I'll be gladly rooting on my team and the team that I have confidence in. And by the way, they will be proud of me, because I'm not going to go on and go crazy and boost their confidence, because every time I do that, it goes the other direction. So I think that they're going to be happy with my approach this season. It's going to lead to good things. All right, so I'm very happy. I'm excited to go to Miami as well with my 2 friends. I am hoping to get on the show live from Miami on Friday. So I'm going to try to make that happen.
That's pretty cool, by the way. That'll be pretty interesting.
Yeah, no, listen, it's a different setting. We'll see where I end up.
Had that once. I had a wrestler come on once, literally after he defended his world title. He was literally like live outside the building, but he came on for like 5 minutes. But you're gonna go live from Miami. Wow, I mean, Brad, this is a big deal.
I'm gonna give it a shot. I think we're gonna make it happen. So I do plan on being here next week talking about opening day, obviously, and the end of the ending of sort of March Madness as we get closer to the finish line. And all other things. So I'm excited for that. And I will also, by the way, be at Mets home opening day, the home opener. I will be there. I believe it's Justin Verlander slated to pitch that game.
Yes.
So I am excited to see that. I'll be there for the first home game. And by the way, speaking of big things, Tom Bryce, because you always say I'm the biggest for last. Well, Steve Cohen decided to give us the biggest scoreboard in the MLB. I'm very excited to see what that looks like in person. Certainly, Steve Cohen's doing some big things. Even, by the way, and I don't want to sound like a fat guy right now, but I was very excited to see the Mets food options for 2023. The new food, the donuts look pretty good. I mean,
what was that? Did anybody see that? It was like the donut.
I believe it was a fried chicken sandwich on a donut bun.
And Anthony Fink was going on posting Yankee options. I'm like, bro, did you not see Citi Field with the popcorn and the donut and the milkshake?
Listen,
I could do it without donuts and chicken, but the donuts.
I wouldn't need it either. I gotta be honest. I'm with you. I don't know if I could do it. I mean,
but
I'm probably in the best shape I've been in about 5 years. So I mean, I don't think I could do it.
So listen, the donut with the Mets frosting and it would look like it was chocolate. That got me. So I'm gonna definitely try to find that at some point. But listen, I'm very excited to root on the Mets this year. We all know, truthfully, I am going to be confident in them all season long. I do want them to win the division, so I am going to be at many Mets games this season, which I'm excited to be for the first time in Miami, and also at the Mets home opener. Speaking of things going forward, obviously you guys see I'm repping Level Up. I'm excited to coach in the spring. I'm going to be coaching 5 teams in the spring, so I'm going to be quite busy, but I am excited. I am a little bit angrier, as you said, Tom, a little bit more heated today because, unfortunately, my third graders did lose in the championship game on Wednesday, which was a tough loss, so I'm still trying to get myself back from that. But ultimately, I am excited for the future with Level Up. We also have some fun things coming up, including our spring break camp, which you can find on our website, levelupli.com. And speaking of that, we're getting closer and closer, Tom Bryce, to that Jesse Winter interview. Everybody's waiting, and Jesse's waiting. We're gonna make it happen. We
looked at the weekend. I think the second weekend in April.
Yeah, we're looking at that second weekend in April, or that spring break week, which is the 10th to 14th. So, ladies and gentlemen, it's coming. I promise. Jesse's going to be a fantastic interview.
I'm looking forward to it. I mean,
he does a great job. So I'm really looking.
2 years we've been planning this, and I think not 2 weeks.
No, he's awesome because he really knows his stuff. Obviously, he has a decorated career. He's running a great program on Long Island. So we're really excited to speak to him. But he's not the only one running a great program on Long Island for kids with basketball. And another one that's doing it for the Long Island Sound, obviously my former teammate at SJLI, that is Matt Hurd. We're finally going to speak to him. So that's going to be Tuesday at 8:30. Be sure to tune in. Me, Matt, Tom. I actually have a little bit of a hype video ready to post.
Oh, wow.
On Monday and Tuesday for it. So I'm looking forward to posting that. Some highlights from me and Matt playing together also.
Wow.
Some of Matt's, big shots against Yeshiva will be on there as well. So I'm looking forward to posting that and getting people hyped up for this interview because this is going to be a great one. I mean, you talk about St. Joe's and you talk about, his leadership with the SAC and you talk about his, how many,
the SAC. Yeah, the SAC's a good point because the SAC leadership kind of went under the radar a bit. We spoke a lot about that during the COVID run, how important that SAC leadership he had really was important to the framework.
So, we got that. We got obviously, him being there for so many years, talking about his experience at St. Joe's. Obviously, the great program, as I mentioned, Long Island Sound that he's running now, amongst other great things he's doing. And obviously, he'll be excited to talk about Mets opening day, as well as other topics. So he'll probably try to bust my chops about all these Boston and New England teams.
And I'll do my best to give him as many opportunities as possible.
Listen. And the last thing is, and I'm going to say this right now and put Matt Hurd on Front Street, because we have to. After we heard the impersonation from the other guy I'm about to mention, Gordon Scheuer, okay, Matt Hurd will have to come on this show and do his version of the impersonation of me and Tom Bryce. I cannot wait to hear how he does
Tuesday night. He's going to come on. I'll put him up to it.
We know what's been going on in the locker room. We know he's been practicing. We know he's ready. All right, so we're going to put him on the spot and make sure he's got his impersonation ready and what he was doing, because I know he was one of the ringleaders of that. That's for sure. So
I'm sure there was many ringleaders in that locker room. Listen, I'm sure it was him and a few other guys. I can probably figure out who the other 2 or 3 were. I can pretty much have an idea of who those ringleaders were.
Yeah. So listen, we will put him on Front Street with that. But I will not talk about any other topics like ping pong or any other sports that he's kicked my butt in. But or 3-point shooting. We'll talk about that for him, but not for me. But certainly, I'm really excited to talk to Matt. Matt's obviously a really good friend of mine. The parents, his family are fantastic.
Brother Timmy, by the way, you have not mentioned his brother once at all here so far, Mister.
I was getting to him. I was just mentioning the parents and Tim. And their whole great family. So they've been great to me. And this is a long time coming, but we really look forward to it. So I think Matt's going to do great. I'm excited to hear from him. And then the following week, as I just mentioned, we got Gordon Scheuer. So
yes, Gordon, another guy. I'm excited about Gordon because Gordon's a guy that, he's got an interesting back. We didn't really get a chance to kind of elaborate on it because we were doing the pre-game coverage of the Golden Eagles, and we kind of thought we were going to get more coverage of that, unfortunately, and it didn't work out. But Gordon's somebody who has such an interesting journey in the game of basketball, and I'm so excited and kind of fascinated, as I always am when we do these spots. We have Corey Jackson, who, by the way, swears he does know you, by the way. Coach Jack said he swears he knows you. Because
by the way, speaking of that, before I wrap up Gordon, I got to listen to that interview with Coach Jackson. He was spectacular. I really liked a lot about him, and I do know multiple mutual contacts. So there's somehow, some way we know each other.
Ashley Jackson's the big one.
Ashley Jackson, he mentioned a couple of his mentors, like Mike Kelly, who I actually work with hand in hand with. I work with Mike, so there was a few other guys who he mentioned who I'm very close with or know of. So listen, I know him. We're definitely going to have to meet at some point. Because I'd love to get some knowledge off of him.
I think he wants the 3 of us to meet Corey Jacks. He was basically really hard firmed on it that we all need to meet. That's what his line to me was, Coach.
Yeah, Jacks. He was phenomenal. He was great. He was fun to listen to, and I definitely learned a thing or two from listening to him as a coach. I always try to get something from listening to other coaches. Something that I could bring to my team or to, my learning experience as a coach. And I think I definitely got a few things from listening to his interview. So great job by Coach Jacks. But like I said, Gordon Scheuer, he's going to be a phenomenal again. He was great on the pregame show. We're going to talk more about his career and what he's done. And I'm going to put him on Front Street again because we need to hear more. We need to hear more from Gordon about what was going on in the locker room. We're not done. I know there's more.
These people to come back to Sportswire. If you say you're going to put them on Front Street, you don't want these people to be one and done.
No, it's all friendly fire here, Tom Bryce. All right, we know they
you
want.
You weren't so friendly and fire tonight, though, buddy. You were not so friendly and fire.
Well, I'll be a lot more friendly to Matt on Tuesday, except for when he talks about his Boston teams. I'll have to,
look, his Panthers didn't do so well this year, so he won't really have much to say on them.
So, listen, it's all fun. 2 great interviews. We're hoping to get Jesse, of course, Jason Gaudiello back on.
I said, I'm ready to do it. I'm ready to go. I'm ready to go that weekend. So
we got a ton of great interviews. We have many other people who want to come on. So I'm really excited.
Messaged me, by the way. One day she'll come back. She said one day was her exact words. One day.
Yeah, so it's a really good time to be on Sportswire Radio. So make sure you're tuning into these interviews. Definitely like, comment, subscribe on YouTube. We're doing great there. So
yeah, a lot of new fans. I get a lot of messages from people that say, "I heard you. I really heard what you had to say." And Coach Jax was really one of the better ones I've done in a while. That's why I love doing the coaches, because the coaches, there's always somebody out there that they get something out of that. So that's why I loved having the coaches come on.
Yeah, so I'm really excited for all those interviews. But to close it out here, let me just say it one more time. Julius Randle, shut your mouth, focus on basketball, and stop running him out to referees, number one. Number two, all right, let's go Mets. All right, let's go Mets. Let's make that clear.
LGM, LFGM, and let's go Yankees as well. So
LFGM. And the last thing I'll say is this, all right, one more thing to end it off. All right, and I'm going to try to make Chris excited with this. All right, I think it's going to be time this week. By the time we speak next week, I know Justin said this; it hasn't happened, but I really think by the time we talk next week, that Aaron Rodgers will be on the New York Jets. I think that we're going to finally get this to happen. I know it's been long. I know it's been exhausting. I know it's been frustrating to wait and wait and wait, but I think it's finally going to happen. And us as New York Jets fans are going to finally be happy and looking forward to our team, because we do have a great team. We do have a great, I thought the Jets made some nice moves as well with Hardman and making that trade with us, getting that other second-round pick. So I'm really excited for what the Jets are going to do, and I'm looking forward to football season as well when that comes. But for now, we're at baseball season. It's time to get to that.
Absolutely, and Joey Bostrom says, enjoy Miami. I'm thinking for whatever reason, when you go to Miami, you'll play that Will Smith song, I'm going to Miami. I think that would be what you'll be playing. I mean, I know Will Smith's not on the good trajectory right now of his career, but I still think that song you'll definitely play. And obviously, huge shout out to Money Matt Hurt. Looking forward to obviously speaking with Matt for the first time and kind of get the story. And Matt's got such an interesting journey because he's played with 3 different coaches, Span, McSloy to Uhl. What you think about for a college basketball player to have 3 different coaches in your career? I mean, I'm so curious on what he learned in those situations. And obviously, an interesting career. The front end of his career, you guys didn't win so much, but the back end, he has a lot of success. So it's kind of an interesting journey there. And obviously, he has a great career at St. Joe's. Obviously, 3-point shooter, all-time great there. Had some big moments. I kind of think was, again, one of the ringleaders for our impersonations, but in terms of his overall leadership of the team, definitely one of the more serious ringleaders. And obviously, I want everybody to follow the Golden Eagles at SJLI_MBball on Instagram and Twitter. And obviously, Gordon, I'm very, very excited about Gordon. I got a feeling, Brad, we're going to do more of Gordon on Sportswire for our Golden Eagles coverage when the season resumes later this year, because I think that people liked when we kind of talked about those games. And Danny Burns was mentioning me. We got Danny when Danny came on 2 weeks ago. He's told me off the air he's watching St. Joe's games now. So I think Danny now wants a spot for coverage of the Golden Eagles. So I think that was a lot of fun. And that kind of whet the palates of people. And obviously looking forward to that. Certainly Matt Hurt is one of our favorites. Gordon, always like Gordon. I'm really curious to hear some of the war stories that Gordon had, not only for the Golden Eagles, but the rest of the program, especially Money Matt Hurt. Matt_Hurt on Instagram as well. Please follow him. His brother Timmy Hurt as well. And I want to thank everybody that's tuned in here. But I wanted to do this before we move on and say goodnight. I wanted to say a condolences, and I shouldn't say this, but I will. And somebody I actually know, a young man, a young boy, Nicholas Russo, passed away here of a rather unfortunate circumstance. Young guy here from the North Shore of Staten Island, and somebody I knew very well. His mother, Carol Russo, actually a big supporter of ours here, always shares our stuff on Facebook, and somebody I was speaking with her, unfortunately, about a couple of weeks ago, talking about the Rangers, and I'm an Islanders fan, and she was kind of getting on me a little bit, talking about wrestling and how she had some of her family that liked my stuff on wrestling, and unfortunately, her young son, a guy I've known since pretty much he's a baby, is no longer with us. And I'm going to pay my respect to the family and not say kind of what has happened, but I want to give my respects to this young man going far too soon, far too short of a time he spent on this earth. And I just want to give my condolences and prayers to Carol Russo and the father, James Russo, Jimmy Russo. And in fact, this is kind of a sad twist. 2 days ago, I spoke to Jimmy Russo. We were talking about somebody else who died from pancreatic cancer. And in kind of a really unfortunate circumstance, their son passes away. And that's just kind of how life goes. So the motto is, enjoy your life, enjoy what's in front of you, and certainly you never know what can happen. Don't take anything for granted, but definitely want to give my thoughts and prayers to Carol Russo on the passing of her son, Nicholas Russo. But I'm excited to be here with my guys, Justin Gianelli of the Baseball Banter Show, Chris Bizet of the Liftoff Jets and the Talking Rivals, and the Brute Force Brad Weiss, who we're getting one more time before he goes to South Beach, Miami, where he gets to see, like Will Smith sang Stallone and everybody in South Beach. I'm trying to think of the lyrics there. It just doesn't get to me. But obviously, make sure you take in all of the nice sunny vibes and bring it to us here. And we'll be back 8:30 p.m. with the legendary Matt Hurd of our Golden Eagles men's basketball program. I'll also be back here Sunday night, 11 o'clock Eastern time, with Wrestling Championship Entertainment's The New Messiah, Nicholas Crenson, and Catalyst James Marshall. But if you're on sportnarium.com/player, you go back to your regularly scheduled programming. If you're on Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube, thank you, everybody, for tuning in. I want to thank Rob Maraska, Randy Dillon, who's back with us. Positive news with Randy. Happy to have him back. John Gonzalez of the Sports Authorities Group, and everybody else that has tuned in and supported us on Sportswire Radio. A lot of people that have tuned in. I want to thank Tina North from Marine Park, all the way out Marine Park. Tina shared our video. I was actually not too far from Marine Park a few days ago, so I'm surprised I didn't run into Tina, of course, from beautiful Marine Park, some of my old stomping grounds out there. So happy to have many of my friends and family still behind me out in Marine Park. So thank you to everybody for tuning in. If you're on sportnarium.com/play, go back to your regular scheduled programming. And thank you. My name is the Reverend Tom Bryce, the host and the owner of Sportswire Radio, the #1 global radio station. Good night, everybody, and thank you.